intense ordinances that we're dealing with. So I mean, I think that's part of it. The other thing that I was just going to say is that it's a slippery slope and sticky when we look at the 5-minute rule, because I do think there are valid reasons to suspend that. But I think when we start doing that, I think we got to be careful not for people to expect that they get oh, well, you suspended it for this person, why don't I not get it? So I'm in favor of suspending it when you need to. Absolutely, we just need to be cautious as a group when we do vote for it, to be able to do that and back Charlie when we need to on his time as mayor. So,
and it had me reflect. I don't want to drag this up, but for me as the mayor, what I've noticed about myself doing this is that I tend to be more lenient with the people that I disagree with, because I don't want to give the impression that I'm shutting someone down because I don't agree with them. And so maybe that was part of. Yeah,
whenever we create inconsistencies, we create more problems for ourselves.
Exactly.
If we don't have a standard, we don't have a purpose for what we're doing.
You mean the rule is that there aren't any rules?
Yeah. So, was there anything in the public comment section that had people thinking we should be making any revisions to either one of these ordinances? We had that long letter from Ms. Terrell that, I don't know if you all read that. But,
yeah, I do. I would like to entertain an idea of an amendment on the private property leash law. So if help me with the wording. If the dog's under direct supervision, it can be out in the yard with me. So picture I'm bouncing a ball off my garage door with my dog, or what I typically do, I open the door and he follows me out back, so I'm violating it every time. Under direct supervision, I think we have a lot less potential for a negative encounter. And I know that there's been suggestions on additional fine and that kind of stuff. I think my problem would be left outside unsupervised. So what would everybody's feelings be on a private property under direct supervision?
Kristen?
I agree. I had a enormous amount of people reach out and they're like, when I open my garage door and I'm bringing in groceries, like my dog stands by me at the back of the vehicle and then comes back inside the house with me. And so I agree. I think by adding direct supervision, that takes care of, if like there's just an aggressive dog just sitting out on a front porch running after people. I mean, if somebody's out there with it, then, the hope would be that, through voice command or whatever other, because, once it hits the street, then if there's nobody direct supervising it, is it at large at that point?
Even if it is supervised, yeah. So
Okay.
if it hits the street and it's not leashed, it would still be at large. But I just think that there might be a good compromise there.
Okay.
Some that I talked to, and I've been getting 2 to 3 every day and been responding back to them, and I appreciate them touching bases with me. Obviously, I was against it from the get-go, and I still am. But I think, a lot of them talked about we're punishing the good ones compared to the bad ones, and I think I was going to talk to Henley how this would work, but instead of a fine, if their dog is in front and under supervision, or not, but if it crosses the boundaries of the property and it is considered at large at that point, then instead of a fine, it should be cited that they are now needing to leash their dogs. If their dog's going to be in the front, either leash it or put up a fence. So that way, the good owners are doing just fine. Their dogs can be out without a leash or a fence or tethered or whatever, but the ones that let them off and they go across onto the cement, sidewalk, street, whatever, then they're fine. They have to tether their dog, whether it's for a year, for the rest of the time they live there. I don't know as for the exact, but then that permit, that's fines the owners that aren't being responsible.
The problem being an unknown percentage of those bites took place when people, if the bite takes place, it's too late now to say, we're going to fine you if your dog leaves the yard.
And if we see that that's still a problem, we can address it. Let's face it, the data's poorly presented to us. We know that it's significant, so we use what we've got. So, I can't tell you circumstances around all of them.
What do you think, Mike? This was your proposal.
if we could craft an ideal piece of legislation that, you know, for when an animal's under direct supervision and controlled by somebody, for instance, playing fetch with the dog out in your yard or something like that, I would be perfectly comfortable with that. The problem that I have is trying to figure out how to craft that language, and I haven't been able to figure out how to do that. But it doesn't make any sense for us to pass ordinances that are just, you know, like prohibition, that everybody's going to violate just because it's what everybody wants to do. You know, we can't be swimming against the tide all the time. And so carefully crafted and everything, I could see myself supporting that, because but I get back to that. I can't imagine that any of our officers are going to go out there and cite somebody that's playing with their dog in their driveway or their front yard.
Yeah.
You know,
No, I can't do
I
that, but
just can't picture that. But
I
then
think when you run into that neighborhood
Yeah.
bickering, though, when you get those two that are really at conflict
Oh,
with
yeah,
each other,
yeah.
that it's going to be a
Get neighbors
it's
to
going to be a
feed each
call.
other.
And
Yeah.
he's out with his dog again.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Yeah. So, I could pretty easily see myself going along with that, because I've been trying to figure out a way to craft that language and haven't.
Mr. John, what would it sound like?
You could put in some constraints there, whether you wanted to have, visual, you have to be outside, audible, so that the dog can hear you. You could put in enough, maybe, data points for the dog and you and the owner, so that you'll at least have something that people would say, yeah, I've got to be out. I can't just have visual looking through the kitchen window. I've got to be outside. I've got to be where I can shout. The dog can still hear me. I have to be, if you want to make it within 40 feet, who's going to go measure 40 feet, that type of thing. So you can put in those type of things.
You could
Yeah, something
define
that-
direct supervision in the definitions.
Well, or,
Mr. Mayor.
yeah, or how you'd say, that they have to be physically with the animal, that they cannot be inside. Oh yeah, I was watching Rover.
But as mentioned, Chris mentioned that somebody, I think it was you. Sorry if it wasn't. In their garage unloading groceries, and they're just, the dog's out there, but they just go in, set it down, come back out. Technically, for that 30 seconds, the dog is unsupervised. But is that warranted enough to say he's at large, nobody was with him? So, like you're saying, we just got to be careful with the wording, that it doesn't, like my wife brought up, and I think some of you received it emails, and respectfully, I received it as well. She didn't talk to me. So any emails anybody gets, she doesn't talk to me about it. She sends it to me just like y'all. That if you have your door open, letting fresh air come, your dog's sitting there by the fireplace looking outside with the door open, according to what it reads right now, that dog would be considered at large because it's not restrained, it's not blocked, it's not whatever. So, and is anybody gonna go in and say, hey, that dog's at large even though it's in the house? No, but it is in the wording. And if somebody wants to hold true to that wording, they're right. They're 100% right. So I think the wording is, we gotta be careful with that. I agree.
I can go with direct supervision, because when I think about the scenarios you were talking about, Mike, it's really not when somebody's playing with their dog. It's the
Yeah.
dog's out there and
Yeah.
there's nobody there, and you don't know if that
Mhm.
dog's gonna come at you or not.
That's my concern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kristen?
So I actually did talk to somebody who lives 4 blocks up from me. So I think it's on 55th, 54th. And so they have a large dog across the street. The front door was open, but the screen door was closed. The family was inside. The dog was on the porch. The people I talked to let their dog out with their 4-year-old. This dog came off its yard, over the street, into their yard, and ripped their dog's ear off in front of their 4-year-old. Thank goodness it didn't go after the 4-year-old. But so I guess my point is, had somebody been out with it, then maybe, if it had kind of got riled up, they'd be like, no, you're okay, go inside, or,
It's not a make-believe problem.
yeah.
It happens often. So is it fair to ask Mr. Henley to draft an amendment with the intent of picture of the person that's out working in this flower garden right next to their dog, you know, that within private property,
Okay.
anything out that goes out on public property is still at
Oh, yeah.
large?
Yeah, physically with and under the direct control of the person.
Okay. Anything else that came up? What, Ms. Terrell had other concerns about why the leash, the tethering section was abbreviated from what it was before. I assume there's some reasoning why
Well,
that stuff was taken out.
the reason is maybe it was overly inclusive. What we have right now, so what the tether before would talk about the length of the dog's body versus the length of the tether, the type and size of the tether, how it was manufactured. Picture like a pulley line going across the top, with the idea being that you don't tie your dog up with something that they can basically garrote themselves with, you know, and become entangled in. But I think Mr. Henley has it drafted that it covers all those safety measures. So I'm not opposed to having those in there. I don't know that the necessity exists because of how it's been written. It's a safety factor for the dog, only for entanglement and the type, you know, hooking a water to a cinder block with a chain.
Yeah. I was just noticing that she pointed that out. I didn't know if we wanted to do
It's,
that or not.
you know, it's clarifying the type of tether, but I think it covers it all with how Mr. Henley wrote it and the general care caveats in there that no matter what temperature it is, where it's at, if the circumstances are bad enough for that type of animal, then it can still be taken care of by animal control.
Which is the response to her concerns about not having some temperatures and some.
The minimum temperatures in
Some
particular.
basic things.
We lowered the,
Okay.
just for record, if you guys aren't aware, a presumptive standard used to be 70 degrees in a car because of the rapid increase in heat. There's not a national industry standard supported. The national standard is 70 degrees. There's no one that tells you why it's not 60, why it's not 80. We reduced that to 60, which doesn't mean you're automatically guilty, but that's a triggering point to start looking closer. And then why isn't there a lower limit? It's the type and breed of dogs, you know.
Okay.
Dog that's prone to living in the Arctic doesn't need the same kind of thing, so the general covers it. If it's too cold for the animal, they'll be able to fix that. But
Well, I have more trust in our animal control officer's judgment than maybe she does. So, was there anything else in her recommendations that people thought we should include, or? Okay. She thought at some point a dog should be considered abandoned if it's been left outside for like 24 hours or something like that. But,
No,
Okay.
because I go on trips and I leave my 2 dogs outside. Somebody comes in, feeds them, puts them right back outside, and yeah.
all right. Good enough. Anything else? Okay. Anything on the liquor license that we left undone or that needs to be changed before we go to second reading? Chris?
frustration. I probably guess I should have thought about it before, and I would like to see data to support why we're changing it. I know why. You brought it up the other day. Well, yeah, but you've been doing that all your life, so you know, where's the supporting factors? Give us something to work with. Steve knows exactly what I'm talking about. Alcohol intake forms and all the public and arrest data that's out there. Is it a problem? I think we can show that there is a problem. How does this ordinance address the potential problem? And, you know, what do we do if it doesn't? So, and how do we track it? So say we put this ordinance in place. Here's a suggestion. And I'm going over my 5 minutes. With both of these things, let's use them
I
as
think
a,
these things are a big deal.
let's use
both
these
of
as
these, and
a
so
as a test point. we've identified problems. The animal ordinance is based on attacks and injuries. Alcohol ordinance is because we have a terrible alcohol intoxication problem here, and that gets on to people not participating in it. Let's measure it, monitor it, give us factual data at least quarterly, and that relies on you. Is it getting better or is it getting worse? Because if either of these laws don't address that, then we're doing it wrong, and we need to do something to address it. So, is it working, is it not working? Is it partially working? Then we need to partially make a change to address whatever the problem is, but factual data, not assumptions, not things are better, not it's getting better, it's getting worse, we don't know. There's seasonal shifts, there's all that kind of stuff, so we have to, especially with the alcohol and the temperature changes. Track them, see if we made a right choice or not.
Okay.
I have to agree, but also, you know, the waitressing and the private property. I have to say we have to relook at that. I disagree. More and more I thought about it, more and more I heard what people were saying. I have to agree with. It's not fair to put it on the waitress and waiters and bartenders and fine them, and then punishing those who want to have a party and somebody decides to get drunk, bring their own, whatever it is. I was talking to Mr. Henley. I know we have another ordinance of intoxication, but I think instead of it being, if we want to really take care of it where people aren't going out and consuming as much as they want to, I think we need to, instead of the fine being up to $750 fine, it's $750 fine. If you want to take that on, great. If you don't, then don't go past your limit, period. Originally, I wanted to go with this because if it protected one citizen, one person, one car from being hit by a drunk driver, I was all game for it. If it saved one life, fantastic. Let's do whatever we have to. Not at the cost or the expense of other people on that aspect. I don't agree with it.
What about people that are driving high? Where does the liability lie on that? I'm gonna go after the Mexican drug cartels that manufacture the drugs.
Let's do.
I mean, the city of Casper, we're gonna go file a lawsuit against El Chapo. I mean,
We're gonna build a wall.
yeah.
Around Casper.
Mike?
Well,
And Colorado's gonna fund it.
I do want to kind of have a continuing discussion about the over-serving problem, because I really see a bunch of different aspects to that. I think that if we've got bars or whatever out there, you know, well, boy, as long as I can keep pumping drinks your way, you're going to keep paying for them, and I'm going to make more money. Or, you know, I'm going to have a party and I'm going to have everybody come over to my house and just get, you know, overly intoxicated. I think those are problems. You know, yeah, I don't like the idea of kicking servers, you know, cocktail waitresses, bartenders, those kind of people around about things, but also they do have a responsibility that they need to be aware that that's a responsible position. And I'm really having a time balancing all those competing interests out. The other thing that I'm really concerned about, and I've talked with John about this, and he provided me with these two things that I think everybody has, the Supreme Court case and then the Joan Barron article, is I'm really concerned about the idea of unintentionally eroding Wyoming's Dram Shop Act, which says there is no such thing as dram shop liability in the state, of unintentionally eroding that. This Supreme Court decision here is a 3-2 decision, which means that if one justice had swung one way or the other, that the result would have been changed. And I think we need to have our eyes wide open on that. That when you have, you know, in my opinion, while the wording in that case is pretty strong and clear, I found myself agreeing much more with Justice Kite and Justice Hill in the dissent in their construction of that situation than I did in agreeing with the majority in that case. And so I've
in
got
the
a
interest of
problem with
moving,
that.
because we got a
Yeah.
lot to do tonight.
Yeah,
this
all I'm
afternoon.
saying is that I'd like to have us keep talking.
I think
and
we've
thinking
got
about
enough
that.
uncertainty about this that it would be unwise for us to just move right through to second and third reading. And, you know, this is the kind of issue that maybe we should step back and take a look at, maybe try to get some data, maybe try to figure out if there's some way we can share that responsibility. I understand your argument, Sean, and I get it, but it's still it's difficult to cite the person who's consuming. So, but anyway, I would suggest we just schedule another time in a work session to take another look at it before we go forward with another reading and pass something we're not happy with, because there's been a lot of concern in the community about this.
And I agree with that. What I was going to suggest is that we request an Attorney General's opinion on this. And in that request that we acknowledge to the AG that there is this case here, but ask them to please do some research and look, look beyond that and see are there precedents in other states and things like that.
Well, I want to find out a little bit about how it's worked in Sheridan too, because I haven't had a chance to make contact up there. Chris?
I've talked to chiefs in both Sheridan and Gillette within the week. So Gillette's had it, they've had over 20 years, something similar. Sheridan's had it for about 18 months with some revisions. It's not used a lot, and so this is one of those laws that the way they function with it is, it's an after the fact kind of. It's not a proactive police are going in like a sting on an underage thing. This is an incident happened. Was there any forecasting events that could have sidelined this? It was casual conversation. So 2 or 3 times a year, either both agencies is what I'm hearing, but maybe we could get more information from them as well on method implementation. When they said when they needed to use it, it was very effective and it was relevant. But like I said, we didn't go real in depth.
We asked the chief to give us an alternative, and he did. And so it was important for us to take a close look at what he recommends, and I don't think we should just dismiss it. But maybe we're not quite ready, is my opinion, given all the dissent that we've heard about this. And I do have a problem with the private parties. So how would we go about giving ourselves some more time, John?
We'll just have it on the agenda, and then somebody moves to table to a time certain.
Okay.
You want to do it a month out, or 6 weeks out, or how long you like to do it?
I think the data the chief, my opinion, the data the chief gave us compels us to do something, because the demerit system was not really effective. So, to just ignore the problem, I think, is irresponsible.
I think there'd probably be quite a few people showing up to that second reading.
That's an understatement.
So if we need to table it, we probably need to make sure community knows that we're tabling it, so we don't have 300 people show up at the chambers and we're like, oh, we're tabling it.
Well, I don't think that we can make the decision to table it here today. We'd have to make that decision in the open meeting.
Yeah.
But I think that it would be a good idea because, quite frankly, I was prepared to make a motion to table that.
Okay.
And that there's to put it out there that there is a great likelihood that there's going to be a motion to table this for further study.
Well, maybe we need to word out somehow. Carter?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, Councilwoman, if indeed you do decide to table, there's certainly no problem in giving us direction to prepare a motion for whatever that might be to have available in your script. And I would suggest that a part of that preparation might be to consider the date that you would like to table it to, because the reality is you can't just table it indefinitely. You should have a date certain. that would, it would come off the table and be reconsidered.
I mean, I guess that dovetails into the question of how long it would take to have the data prepared for us to review.
I can't answer that.
Out of curiosity, did everybody get the email from Jesse Morgan with the stats of the public intoxication, the DUI, the drugs, all that? Anybody have any idea where those stats came from?
Yeah. Those are from arrested persons before they get booked into jail. Series of questions that are asked and compiled by the State Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police Association. So it's from WASCOP for a yearly alcohol and drug summary. It comes out.
Because I know it wasn't full because it went to September, but I was just.
It's not complete, is what Jesse told me.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and as we make it clear that we're going to table this, I think giving the message to people that we appreciate the fact that, you think this is inappropriate. Be nice to get some other suggestions about how do we address this problem.
I suggest too,
that I haven't seen.
people have Facebook stuff. I would probably start getting that out to your constituents. Stuff that you're going to table is probably going to be tabled for further discussion, for further review. It'd be one way for us to get the word out because it traveled pretty fast the first time around.
Carter?
Yeah, one thing that I would ask you to consider as you're considering alternatives with regard to what might be appropriate and so forth is the idea that on the one hand we have our retailers who are saying, hey, we need people to come out of their homes and drink in our presence because we're a professional organization and we can oversee you from a professional standpoint to make sure that things are done appropriately and you're taken care of and your safety is sought after from professionals. And then on the other hand, they also come back and say, on the other hand, we don't want you to hold our servers to a standard that the law might recognize as a professional standard. We think that should be overlooked. So my question to this council is, if indeed you want a solution, I think that solution ought to consider that reconciliation that needs to take place that would say, hey, if we're going to send our partiers and our folks who want to imbibe and so on to these professional settings for that activity, where exactly does that professional oversight start or end? I think it's appropriate to ask.
And I'm not saying that we're going to abandon the chief's recommendation. I just think we should table this and have some more time to talk about it before we go forward. Maybe we go forward with it anyway for those reasons and others. So, is everybody okay with just tabling to, how much time do you think we need?
A month.
Okay? Table it till whatever the date would be, the third Tuesday in February, whatever that is.
Well, and I'd kind of want to ask if there's anybody in the room other than me that would like to ask the Attorney General to weigh in on this.
I agree.
John, do
Is that
you have
enough
any
time?
idea how long that takes for those guys to do that?
I don't, and they
You
don't
have a
have to
crystal ball,
respond to
but-
it. But we can always come to the questions here and just see if they will take it. I don't know that this would be a question that they'll want to take, but they might.
Carter's got a reply.
I agree completely with what Mr. Henley is saying because the Attorney General is not bound to respond to requests for information or opinion from us. On the other hand, when they do yield one, it typically takes a long time, and I would say a month is not long enough.
But it'd take 6 or 7.
It could take 6 or 7 months, it could take a year.
Well, yeah, I don't want to put it off that long, but for instance, I'm thinking they might have some research still on hand from that Supreme Court case that came out. Maybe we could send a request to them and ask them if they could give us an idea how long it would take. But I would, at this point, I'd be in favor of tabling it for.
Well, we're only tabling for 3 weeks because we got off kilter in January, so maybe we should make it 5. First Tuesday in March.
I don't know that it won't take the PD that long to gather data.
Okay.
They'll be able to get it forthright. And then as far as if just checking with Sheridan and Gillette and anybody else that has it, shouldn't take very long either. I think 3 weeks is real good.
3 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the date would be when again?
It would be the third Tuesday
February
in
19th.
February.
February
That
19th,
is.
okay, thank you. Very good. We'll prepare that motion accordingly.
Okay. All right. So, on to the CNFR ticket sales position. So, Chris, do you want to tell us again what's going
Yeah,
on
sure.
here?
And I am definitely not gonna be the subject matter expert. But Christina is. Brooke from Visit Casper spoke with me about the potential of increasing ticket sales for the CNFR. So this is the 20th year of the CNFR. Probably one of the biggest single event draws that we have, maybe county-wide, but certainly ongoing at the event center. But we don't fill very many tickets. So you've got a sporting event that's a spectator show, and you've got a culmination of a long series of rodeo events where this is their crowning event for each of the contestants. And I won't go into the details because I know you will for me. Basic proposal is we offer $10,000. Natrona County gives $10,000. 10 grand from Economic Development Joint Powers Board and 5 to 10 from Visit Casper. And I'm told that Natrona County has already pledged 10 grand. This is for a contract position with a date certain end. But I don't want to be deceptive, because if this person if they're successful at gathering these outside tickets other than from Casper and drawing people in here, I think it's a position that's probably worth us looking into long term. So if our investment produces us money, then it's worthwhile. If it fails, then we shouldn't continue it. But I'll turn it over to Christine.
I'm Christine Olson. I'm with the Casper Event Center, and we have been lucky enough to call the College National Finals Rodeo home for the last 20 years. We just celebrated our 20th year here. We have had a nice, slow, steady growth in number of attendees that are coming in every year. We've had some high points, we've had some points that have kind of dropped back down, and unfortunately over the last 3 years, we really just kind of have flatlined in those ticket sales. There's been a very concerted effort, I would say, between the CNFR committee on how do we drive attendance, how do we get more people into this event, therefore increasing that economic impact as well to the city of Casper and to Natrona County. Through a lot of meetings and conversations that we've had, we really feel that this direct sales position is our best chance in increasing the ticket sales numbers and getting more people in to see this event. With the College National Finals Rodeo, it is one of the single largest events at the Casper Event Center and in the Natrona County. It is on a 5-year contract, so the end of that contract right now is at 2022. And I think really our hope and our goal right now is to bring everything together and go, what can we do to ensure that we have another 20 years of College National Finals Rodeo at the Casper Event Center and at the city of Casper. So with that direct sales position, we really just want to get a person that's just going to be out there in the communities, in the surrounding communities, just reminding them, hey, that CNFR is here, and just really working on a concerted group sales efforts, again, driving more attendees into the Casper Event Center, into the city of Casper, and into Natrona County. And with this investment, again, just hoping to secure another 20 years with the College National Finals Rodeo.
And the way that Brooke was explaining it to me is this position is out of town virtually. You're going out drawing other communities into Casper, and Visit Casper oversees the contract and manages it, controls the takes care of the overhead. Our cost is a monetary cost. 10 grand isn't anything small. I had a wise advisor once tell me that we can continue to do what we do and lose X numbered hundreds of thousands at the event center, or try something different. Just try something different.
Mr. City Manager, where can we find $10,000?
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we think that there would be funding available in the remaining unencumbered, unassigned cash balances in 1% 15 that would be adequate to cover this contribution, and if indeed it's the council's will to look at a 3-year commitment, that the memo kind of alludes to, I would suggest that would be the place that we would do for the next 3 years, if in fact that's the direction you want to go.
Could I attach this to just like what I was talking about on the others? Let's see how successful they are. That doesn't mean you gotta go out and make us $2 million. That means you gotta make us more than we had and make it worthwhile to the duration of the recommended contract here, June 30th. Reevaluate. If it's not successful, we don't continue. Because how often do we come up with an idea and then refuse to let go because it's mine, right? So see if it works, and if it doesn't, and that'll rest with you guys, and I'll bet you'll pick the right people. And
Absolutely. You know, that's been a big thing. Nothing ventured, nothing gained is a lot what we've discussed as well, you know. We really feel like this is our direction to go and just have someone out there pounding that pavement. But I think we're all in agreement too that we're going to see, you know, how this year goes, and we absolutely need to measure by results. And so we'll all be reconvening on what that dollar number looks like at the end of the season, as well as that attendee growth.
And we got 4 people involved in this, or not 4 people, 4 organizations all joining in on the same singular
Everybody's
effort. I
gotta
think
show it's a good investment.
I agree with Councilman Walsh's caveat that he's introducing into this discussion, but I would also perhaps suggest that indeed if we lose one of our funding partners, say Natrona County or the EDJPB, then we too get the opportunity to withdraw our commitment as well. Whether it be year 1, year 2, or year 3.
Everybody okay with this? Okay.
What do we look up for a timeline?
We put this on the consent agenda next Tuesday.
I think so. Okay.
Well, I'll do. Thank you.
Why not? Looks like unanimous to me, so.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, community promotions. You want to start us or just?
If I could, that'd be great. Council has been really good to provide us feedback and so forth with regard to community promotions and where you'd like to see the funding go and so on. We are in need of your final direction with regard to this ultimate allocation. The challenge that you have is with regard to the disparity of direction versus funds available. And so our request would be to direct us as to whether or not you'd like to see those disparities shortened so that indeed we're more consistent with what's budgetarily available, or if you'd like to add to the budget that likely would come from a budget amendment action ratifying your discussion this evening at a later point in time. In the memo that we sent out over the weekend, we gave you an idea or two to think about as it relates to trying to bring those two balances together. Certainly, I think it's always important to really evaluate whether or not your 5-vote doctrine should apply. To me, 5 votes rule the day as it relates to one funding decision or an overall funding decision. The challenge with that is that it really only nets about $600 to the table in terms of clarifying those vote choices that each of you made in your voting sheets. Nonetheless, one way or the other, whether you'd like us to add funds to the budget or get your preference as to how the monies available or reconciled, that's really fundamentally where we need to be to see where you want to go.
Okay, opinions, Ken?
I think we need to stick with the 21.9. We asked for a balanced budget. We've asked to watch the budget. I think to go over it. I think I don't believe it's a good use of money.
Anything else? Kristen?
So, I mean, there are, one that I see particularly, the Natrona County Library, it felt to me like they were pretty clear in their application that if they didn't receive the full amount, then they wouldn't be able to bring an author in. I don't know if that's changed, like maybe if they sought funds from like another organization. And I know it's only $277, but it seemed pretty clear in the application that they couldn't bring the author in without the full 15.
So you're arguing for the 5 vote? process where they would be eliminated because they didn't get 5 votes? Is that, okay. Other opinions on whether we should up the amount or leave it where it was?
Well, I
Mike?
think we should stick with the 21,000 because that's the pot of money in essence that we have. But I'm a little bit confused trying to follow what's blacked out and what's not blacked out here and everything. Maybe if Carter or somebody could explain that a little bit.
Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to try to answer that. Councilman Huber, the blacked out boxes basically mean that they didn't ask for certain aspects of what they could have asked for. So for example, when you look at the Casper Figure Skating Club, they didn't ask for any cash, and therefore there's no entry for cash in their proposal. However, they did ask for facilities, as you can see, and that would equate to $2,887.50. Or the 50% equivalent, because remember, they're required to provide 50 cents on the dollar for their request. The true outcome, or excuse me, the true outlay from the council is really only just over $1,400 on that particular request.
Okay,
That answer the
thank you.
question? Anybody want to make another argument for upping the amount, or do we just leave it at the 21 and divide it up? And okay. Anytime we do this, I think it's important to say it one more time, that when we make these allocations, there's a tendency where people say, well, you think this is more important than that. And that's not what we're saying. We're saying we think this is going to bring more economic activity into our community than that. And so, and I think no matter how many times we say that, people still want to say, well, you think soccer is more important than the library. And that's not what we're saying. We're saying that the people that come to the famous author event would be the people of Casper. People who come to the soccer jamboree are people from Cody and Powell and Sheridan and all over the state. So that is the purpose of community promotions. So is that enough for us to move forward then? You got the answers you needed?
Well,
Are we a little bit over?
we're still over. That's right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we basically need your help in helping us understand what you'd like to do in order to get it to 21.9. If you would like us to just proportionately deduct in order to make the 21.9, we can do that too, and therefore be very objective in that result. It's up to you, whatever you'd like to see.
So someone might have to pay 55% of the facility instead of 50%.
That's right.
That seems fair to me. Yeah.
If I could, I would like to see the facilities asking those who asked for money for the facility to be cut more than the in-kind or cash.
So cut from the facility amounts?
Can I ask why, Ken?
It's gonna sound terrible, but business, the fact that this is a business and it is city property, that if they will have to spend money on the city, which brings back money to the city, and business-wise, it's a smart investment because they're still investing into the city of Casper one way or another.
Other opinions about where we should make the change, Steve?
Well, I guess the only suggestion I would make is that it was cash. Was that a portion of it before, or was cash just added in this year?
No, we've lost, but we've been very conservative about cash.
Okay.
Well, if I might just, the last couple of cycles, council has been trying to relegate only to facilities and in-kinds. So the cash sort of dismissal, if you will, or removal, is really only been a very temporary abeyance.
We did that last year, and then we just I didn't realize.
only did the facilities and,
Okay.
yeah, that's right.
Stand corrected.
But historically, cash has been a part of this.
And I don't know if it would make up the difference, but where I was headed with that is you have people that are in-kind or facilities, but they're also cash at the same time. So, and then you have people that are just organizations just asking for cash, and neither of the other two.
Correct.
So I would say that if we are providing facilities or in kind and they have cash in there also, that we look at reducing those amounts first. And that way, at least the people that are asking only for cash, it kind of balances it out. Everybody's gonna get something if the numbers come out right.
Okay. Other opinions? Which way we should go, or where we?
But I would like clarification just on Ken's point. Is it that big of a strain on our facilities if we do the donation to that? I just remember YEC when we had the in-kind donation to YEC years ago. We used to do a ski day, and they gave the ski place to us, and I mean it was a good cause and so forth. I just want to know, is it that big of a strain, Carter?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, I wouldn't say it's a strain, particularly because, portions of these dollars are being restored to the general fund, so to speak.
Okay.
And so, nah, I wouldn't say it's a huge strain.
Okay. I just wanted clarification on that.
Probably, if I may continue, the bigger strain would be if council decided to give everything that was requested and only allowed 21.9 to be the,
That's a good.
the funding solution. That would be a bigger strain to try to reconcile.
I think maybe that's what I was trying to go at. I mean, if we're okay with facilities,
Yeah,
doing that, that's the lesser of the two, possibly of that.
I think it's fair.
Okay.
So where are you suggesting we take the money out then, right?
That I don't. I just wanted a clarification. I mean, I'm fine. I'll be fine with whatever we do. I just think it's tough to be able to say. I mean, I understand where Ken's coming from too, but I wanted just clarification on that. I have no answer.
I've always bended toward supporting facility use rather
And I would take it from
rather
cash,
than
yeah.
giving cash. And so, just to make sure that people get a little bit of help and they can, use our facilities. So, I would vote for simply prorating the cash and down to whatever amount it needs to be to get us to that 21.
I agree.
Yeah, I can go with that.
Thumbs up on just taking it out of cash? Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I can clarify real quickly, it sounds like for facilities requested and the in-kind request, we would leave those whole.
That's what I'm
And-
suggesting.
Okay, and then we would take the balance out of the cash request and proportionately allocate.
So most of the cash requests would probably be cut in half roughly, so
Okay.
we can get the $5,000 out of there.
All right.
There'd be about $5,010 left for cash total.
So we're not giving out a lot of cash.
What do you
Everybody
think,
okay?
Steve?
What's that?
What do you think? Because I kind of liked your idea.
Well,
on
Mr. Mayor, the only thing that I would say is that if you're gonna prorate it out of the cash, could we entertain the idea that if they're getting something facility-wise, that you take from those first?
Oh, I see
And
what
then
you're
if there's
saying.
anything, whatever's left over, say there's $1,000 you need to come up with and you had 4 people left there, 4 agencies out there that just asked for cash, then prorate that amount. At least-
25%
Yeah,
apiece, yeah.
we're not taking
Okay.
more money from them, they get, cause the others are gonna get funded, whether it's in kind or facility on that portion of it, and people that aren't asking for that should get a little bit more.
And that
I'm
will-
okay with that too.
We could do that.
And that's only one entity, so oh no, I'm sorry, that's for facilities, it'd only be one. For in-kind, there's more.
Yeah. So
Right.
if you're getting facilities
Or in-kind.
Or in
or
kind.
in kind, you don't get cash. That's what you're arguing.
Yeah, if we can take it out of that amount, that'd be great. If you can't take it all out of that, then just prorate what's left of those that
Until
are just
we-
asking for
Until we
cash.
get done. Is that
We
fair
could do
enough?
that. Gotcha.
I like that.
You might be concerned when you see the outcome. I mean, we'll get an opportunity to see that before making a final vote on it, right?
Well, it'll come to us in a formal meeting though, as something we would need to pass.
I'm not sure I've heard the whole question, I'm sorry.
Well, after we parse out the money like we're talking about, maybe it's gonna surprise you on how it looks at people not being funded, and it might change your mind on players.
Well, the hockey club would get no cash. The
Oil City Street Slam.
USA softball would lose their cash because they get in kind.
It's difficult to make the decision on that, just like you were saying. Soccer brings in people statewide a lot. That 3-on-3 basketball is a huge event statewide. Those are draws, and you know, I know you go to that 3-on-3 and you've got families and siblings and everything there, and I know that hockey brings in a lot. So does soccer, and so does all the rest of them. So we're talking about the community promotions. Is it less impacting on everybody that just peel a proportionate amount off of the entire list? Or do we face, I guess my question is I don't know, do we face shutting down some of these events in lieu of scaling back every one of them?
Well, that may be the result of where we started with $21,000 for $120,000 for the requests, not this extra $5,000. Sean?
I mean, you know, you remember the hockey club, they requested $5,700 and we said $642. I mean, is that gonna break the bank for them if we don't give them $600 when they requested $5,700? And the same goes for, you know, like the library, $270 out of $15,000, and some of these other ones. USA softball, $300 out of $5,000 requested. So, yeah, I mean, if that $600 is gonna make or break them, then they got other problems.
The Oil City Street Slam though is, I don't know how we could include it fairly in this, because they only asked for $136 in kind, and right now we're giving them $1,100 in cash. So I'm pretty sure if we approached them and said, because of that $136 in kind, we're going to not award you the $1,100 in cash, they're gonna turn around and say, I don't want the $136 in kind, thank you. I'd rather have the $1,100 in cash. I mean, that's unproportionate as far as I'm trying to keep it fair with moving things around.
Mr. Mayor, one of the things that we didn't address was with regard to entities that didn't get five votes.
Right.
Yeah. And that'll eliminate some of these right off the table, right up from the get-go, I should say. If indeed council were A, either to change your votes, or B, go that route of the 5-vote doctrine.
Which ones didn't get 5?
Yeah, you wanna talk about that for a little quick?
So those are on your second sheet under the cash that's highlighted in yellow. It would be the library and USA softball. So as Carter mentioned before, it's roughly $600 for those two. And I believe they've just received 2 maybe each. Maybe 4 for the USA. But the library only received 2 votes.
So that would only move us $600 closer to our dollar limit?
Well, it moves quite a bit off the table in terms of what they initially requested. Like, for example, the library wanted $15,000 in terms of the amount of money that they're looking for, you know. If we go back to the discussion that we had with regard to what they were looking for, but also they aren't looking for anything else, and so from a cash standpoint, while we would only be looking at $277 based on the average result of what it is that was actually supported, then you're right, that isn't a whole lot to work with.
So $277 for the library, that is the average amount of the people that voted to give anything to him.
But it was only 4.
Yeah.
But it was only two.
Or
Two.
two,
Well, I
excuse me.
4 on the softball.
And the library receives funding from us through other sources, correct?
They,
Throughout the year.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, they do get some 1 cent funding from the city. Yeah.
I think $300,000 over 4 years. Steve?
So just, I guess, quickly doing the math on that, just 21.9 was the number that we had.
Yes, sir.
that we're allocating. So, taking that away, you end up with $4,213.04. Taking the cash away from those that are either facilities or in kind ends up being $3,601.61. So you're roughly left with $611. And out of the rest of there's 5, 1, 2, 3. There's 5 others asking for cash. It's $5,620.45. So you gotta. Just kind of makes sense to me to take $600 away from that, and take the cash away from the ones that are, as I said, in
On a
kind of
proportionate
facilities,
basis,
and
yeah.
then do it. Yeah, but do it proportionate.
Okay. We can do that. We can do that.
Any objections?
I still don't agree with the Oil City Street Slam. I still think that's ridiculous to remove them from getting any cash because they asked for $136 of in-kind.
And what exactly is that?
It's a 3-on-3 basketball tournament. They had like 120 teams last year.
We'll look
It's
out.
big. It's really big.
It's 3 days, at least 2 days.
Yeah.
I think it's 3.
Yeah, downtown, it's really big.
Do bring a lot of people in, just like quantities.
And if I may,
I don't know what to do with that.
if council wants to support the program because you believe it more closely fits the mission of the community promotions idea, then I would suggest we go around and see if there's 5 votes to say keep the cash and drop, because the reality is they're only gonna get $68 in actual benefit from the
Yeah.
city, because they're required to match that 50%, right? So,
And then prorated.
and we certainly could prorate it with what they have available left, but I would say you probably ought to have a vote. I'm not,
Okay.
I'm using that term loosely.
I'm sure
but,
Chris is right, that if they had a choice, they would.
Yeah.
I think we should address Carter's question. Do we go with 5 votes or not?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm good with
That
that.
Okay,
doesn't
so
solve
those two
the
are
problem.
Okay, so yeah, those
The-
would be gone.
So that's off the table then. That's great.
The library and the
Yeah, the
softball.
library and
Yep.
the softball.
Softball, okay.
And then just remove the in-kind from the Oil City Slam and prorate the cash till we get down to where we need to be. Unless we do Steve's thing, which was take the cash away from anybody else that got facilities.
I think they would probably fall into that proration part of the formula.
Mr. Mayor? I make a suggestion that we go top to bottom, look at it, and see if we want to make any adjustments. I think we're going to anyway.
I agree.
Okay, let's
that
try
okay?
to do it as quickly as we can, because we've got other stuff, so. Okay, so Casper Amateur Hockey. Opinions. If we follow Steve's suggestion, they would basically lose their cash. Okay with that? They're getting all these, they're getting
They get 10 grand in facilities?
Well, yeah, five from us.
They get basically 10 grand, but we provide 5,000. Yeah.
Casper Corral, all they asked for was cash, so theirs would be prorated to whatever extent we needed to, okay? Casper Figure Skating, they're good because all they asked for was facilities. Soccer Club, same. Sports Alliance, and that's the Old City Slam, so we would basically eliminate their in-kind and prorate their cash. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Winter County Library didn't get 5 votes. Nicolason Art Museum, they would lose their cash, correct?
What's that do to the Nick Fest?
Well, you're getting
We're getting in kind of
less than
$6,000.
less than $1,500 out of a $15,000 ask. So I don't know if it's going to make an impact. How minute that will be. I think the in-kind services are more important than the cash in that situation.
I agree.
I was looking at the wrong line. I was looking at the one grade out above it. I'm like, all right.
Proud to host the best, only asked for cash, theirs would be prorated down still further. USA Softball didn't get 5 votes. Visit Casper, asked for cash, got a small amount, and theirs would be prorated down a little bit from there. Visit Casper, same. Am I on track? Okay.
Special Olympics doesn't change, correct?
Right.
Right. So I just have a question back up on USA Softball then. So is that in kind, that's gone, so that would get added back in, correct?
Yeah, they were completely.
Oh, I
They
see what
didn't
you're
make it
saying,
5
so the
votes.
994 would go back in.
Oh.
994 and the
In-kind
333 would
and
go back in.
the cash result would go back in.
So then we have $91 left to prorate, if I did my math right. If we're taking out the
So-
642 with the hockey club, the 68 in-kind Rose City Slam,
Mhm.
277 famous author, the state, and the library. 'Cause we had,
So most people are gonna get.
oh,
what
wait,
they
wait,
asked
I
for.
might have double counted. No, I double counted because I had already taken out the library and the softball cash. Yep, so no, we have a little bit more. It's gonna be a little more like $600 left to prorate. Yeah, because this is the total difference.
Yes.
Fleur brings up a very good point. It looks like the only thing on USA Softball that didn't get majority support was the cash.
Correct.
The in-kind
Ah,
stuff
okay.
did get majority support, so
Okay.
5 votes would apply to the cash.
So we're not.
Cash only. Okay.
All that
Thanks
does
for
is,
pointing that
all
out.
that does is mean the proration takes a little bit more off of everybody's
Yep.
figure, so, but we've already reduced them so much, it's almost a negligible amount.
Yeah, probably.
Are we at a solution point?
I think so.
Okay. I hope we all remember this as we put our budget together, because it's gut wrenching to say no to all these folks and to give them amounts that are so way below what they've asked for, and hopefully our budget picture will be in a position where we can set aside more for this next time.
Mr. Mayor, you bring up a great point, because remember, we're kind of on a short cycle this time around because we're trying to get it out aligned with the budget process. So that means in March, we're gonna get to go through this again. At least where we open the window, right, for the actual application process. But what would be helpful to know in March would be what you'd like to see in fiscal year 20 show up in the budget for this program. And so that is something you should be thinking about post haste, because it's coming up soon.
I'm sure there are plenty of communities that don't even do any of this.
Yeah, that's right.
But at the same time, these are all great programs.
They are.
And if we can support them, we should. Okay, anything else on community promotions? Ready to move forward? Okay. Budget calendar.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is really not intended to need a lot of conversation. I just want you to be aware of the approach that we would like to take pertaining to the preparation of the 2020 budget. You'll note that there are work sessions that need to be had at various times throughout this period of time. And so we're kind of pre-reserving dates, if you will, for various increments of these discussions that we will be in huge need for your direction on. One example in particular would be the capital budget review, March 26th. That's a big one. You've already given us direction as it relates to utility rates and so forth, so you've checked that off for us. Council goals we're going to have to figure out tonight, and the health fund is going to be impactful to the budget as well. So those little stops along the way are really critical for us, because you're giving us critical information and direction that help us establish the budget in some of the major portions of the general fund in particular.
Deal with each one of them in turn.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions for Carter on this? Okay. CATC route modification update.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you've spent quite a bit of time taking public input with regard to the route modifications that have recently been submitted for your consideration. As we talked about before, tonight is one of the last steps that we would need to get to the point of making it official. We want to talk about the route changes that we're suggesting, and should you agree, we would then prepare the formal consideration for the floor in a very meeting soon, very soon, coming up. So tonight you're giving us input in preparation for the final formal consideration, which will be coming up real quickly. So with that, if I could turn the time to Mr. Aaron Closey, that'd be great.
And what we're looking at is what we looked at last time.
The revisions and everything that we're suggesting would be included in your memo dated January 16th.
Okay, just to reiterate, just from what we kind of discussed last time we met at our public hearing, and that was on the 8th. So I just wanted to briefly kind of give you an update on, now that we're through the public comment period, this is kind of what we did, this is what we found, and then I can just reiterate kind of the proposals, the proposed routes that we're bringing forth to you. So we started in late November, ended earlier this month. We had 151 surveys completed. We had several meetings with riders and a rider group, and we also met with bus drivers. And throughout all of this, I think we learned a lot about our riders. We learned a lot about our system and how people perceive it, and we got a lot of great feedback. If you'd like, I can just touch on maybe some, what I'll do is I'm just going to kind of take you through the proposed changes, and what I'll do is also touch on where we've made some tweaks based on what we learned from the public. So there's going to be some slight changes from what you heard from the public hearing, and I'll note those as I go through this. So first of all is the yellow route. So currently yellow route runs on odd even hours, so each leg is run on a separate hour. So what we're proposing is combining those legs so that this entire length, Poplar Street and CY, all the way to PV, is ran every hour. In order to do this, we're proposing to remove some stops in order to save some time and speed up the route. So that includes 4 stops in Paradise Valley, a stop along CY Avenue, 3 stops along the Poplar Street corridor along Kaufman, and removing a stop at 6th and Walcott, and then moving a stop from yellow to green. And that stop, 669 CY, will still be serviced just by the green route. And the reason we're doing this is really just making this a lot more user-friendly, reducing a lot of confusion, and just removing some rides in order to achieve that. Green route changes, what we're proposing for just Monday through Friday is pretty simple. They're stops that we're suggesting of removing at City Park and 13th and Elm, just due to low ridership, and removing a stop at Smith's grocery store, just due to the fact that it's already being serviced by purple and yellow route, and then adding a stop at 669 CY from the yellow route, and then adding a stop to serve NCHS. So this is something that was new. One thing that we learned is there was a lot of concern with some of the red route modifications that we'd be taking away a stop for students at NC. And so we tried to address that by adding a stop to the green route in order to still give students a really close bus stop that they can still get to their destination on weekdays. For Saturdays only, we were just looking at removing stops up in the Wilkins Circle area. So that's near Motel 6, Central Wyoming Counseling, and at state offices in the Event Center and Trail Center. And again, these are just Saturday only. One thing that we have added based on feedback, and people were very receptive and supportive of the idea of also removing Boys and Girls Club on Saturday, because Boys and Girls Club is also not open like these other destinations. The reason we've proposed that is just these seem like these Saturday changes are really just common sense efficiencies that we can make so that we're not stopping at destinations that aren't even open. Proposed red route changes is a lot of this came down to removing stops that simply just have low ridership. Over the years, we've noticed ridership on red has decreased slightly, and to just address that, we're looking at a handful of stops, 6 total, along the Ash Street corridor, and then 2 stops along 15th Street, at 15th and Ivy and 15th in Illinois, and then moving a stop from Collins and Walcott to serve Walcott and 6th. So, oh, and then blue route is, we're not proposing any tweaks based on what you saw on the 8th. Really the only change that we're proposing, and this is for safety reasons, is to remove a westbound stop along Walsh Drive. And that stop will still be serviced. But it'll only be once per hour. So, and then this is just kind of a summary of the changes that were made based on public comment. So again, that was removing the 555 South Walcott stop on yellow, Boys and Girls Club on green, NCHS stop for students on green, and then another thing I forgot to mention is that one thing that we learned about the Smith stop is that people were very supportive. They're just very concerned about, as a pedestrian, having to cross CY Avenue to get to Smith's. And so we think we can solve that by coordinating with YDOT. So those are the big things that we learned from the public comment period, and this is at this time kind of the proposal that we bring to you for some feedback.
Questions for Aaron? I have 2. You've tested the yellow route to see that we can do this within an hour.
Yeah.
Seems like it's a lot to cover in an hour.
Mr. Baker with CATSI has ran it multiple times. It's tight. It's definitely tight. And we have discussed it at great lengths. But we do feel like we can still achieve yellow and also provide deviation when people request it.
And with the blue route, we heard some comment that the buses were sometimes full.
Yeah.
Is that a real problem, and how often does that happen? Do we know?
That's a good question, and it is our most popular route. I can't tell you how often, if it's on a daily basis or a weekly basis, where we have a full bus, but I think it's quite often. And I think to address that concern, I know there was a comment made about the bus being full and individuals not getting a ride. It is CATSI's policy that those individuals would always make sure that those individuals get a ride. If it is full, that person gets a ride from a CATSI bus. So, but maybe Marge can tell us about how often maybe a request like that occurs, or how often it is full.
Well, they're full. That happens daily, at certain time periods that they're full. That it's standing room only. Depends on the time of the month, depending on how many times it happens within one day. But as far as getting a ride, it is our policy, for instance, if a person's using a wheelchair, both the wheelchair positions are in use on a fixed route bus, we will send a CATSI bus to take that person so they don't get left. But the solution for Blue is larger bus and or 2 buses, one going one way, one going the other, which at this point is cost prohibitive. But it does happen often.
But there's a replacement schedule for the buses, so at some point, there
Right.
might be a chance to
We hope.
upgrade.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for Aaron or for Marge? Go ahead and put this on the agenda for approval then.
Thank you.
Good. Do you have anything else you want to ask?
If we want to, we need to make modifications, or if we disagree with it, is that what you said when it's on the agenda?
Well, this would be on the agenda for approval for this change next Tuesday.
Okay.
So if there's any concerns, we should talk about them now.
Well, I do, because I've read the Appendix A several times, and I see a lot of it talking about, the yellow route on, for PV, taking that circle clear down, give me just a sec, I'm trying to get to it, I apologize. Taking away like 291, Paradise Drive and PV Park. Reading the appendix, there's a lot of people in there that's saying they don't want it gone, don't take it that away. And I would have to agree, because I live in that area and I do see people get on at 291. I do see people waiting at Paradise Drive and PV Park. As far as Jonquil, Riverbend, and Begonia, that I don't think is an issue getting rid of. Another concern that I have is on by the Sunrise Shopping Center, Kaufman, 1249 West 25th Street Bridge. Anybody that rides the bus in that area right there has to cross the stream that runs all the way down there to get to the other side of the roads to catch any of those other stops. The stops on Poplar Street. They would have to either cross or walk clear down to Sunrise or walk over. That would, I've just heard a few concerns on that one, but reading the appendix for the PV one, I have to agree with them. I think removing that loop, I think, is a bad idea. But I live there, and I see the people ride the bus. I see it, and I'm sure some of you guys read the appendix as well. But if you go through, there's a lot of it that sits there and says, "Do not get rid of that. Do not take that away." We use it. We drive. So I know that puts it longer for the hour. I understand that, but I don't believe it should be taken out.
Do you have a response to that?
It was,
Yeah,
it was either go every other hour or do
Right,
this.
right. Councilman Bates is absolutely right. There was some pushback on yellow. We flat out asked the question in the survey: do you support removing these stops in order to achieve, greater speed and coverage every hour? I think the total response was about 57% were in support. And so it definitely wasn't an easy recommendation to make. It's not necessarily a no-brainer. But based on what we saw overall in our conversations with folks and what we saw in the surveys is that we found that the majority were in support of giving up some of these stops for, giving this up for that.
To have the hour of service.
But it's certainly, at the cost of some of those Paradise Valley riders.
Mike?
Well, so if the various stops that in Paradise Valley that you have marked for removal,
Yeah.
Would that eliminate that loop in there, or would you still have Paradise Drive and Honeysuckle and
Right, exactly.
and
So
the other one over there? It'd just decrease the number of stops on that loop.
Right, so I can show you
There's the old ones.
existing yellow currently goes the entire perimeter of TV.
So what
How
I'm
far is it
saying,
for them to walk from here to here? Is it pretty far?
So the proposed
Comes from
would
what
we
area?
still service
it's
Valley
not
and
that
Iris.
far, but you're
And
talking
Paradise
about
Drive.
removing
Okay,
all
and,
this, so
on
even
the
these
Poplar
people, these
Street
people
route,
would have to walk
You're,
either here or to
you're
there.
basically completely
See,
eliminating the bus
it's-
going down.
It's only about a
South
mile,
Rockland.
but
Yeah, okay. My
may
little
I
niece Julie
Makes sense
lives
for Kim.
across the street from 3411, and she's like me, the only person that uses that stop ever.
Kim?
So, as she pointed out, here's the problem that I'm seeing is you have stops here, 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 and then here. So you're asking even, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So you're asking these guys to either walk clear over here or try to walk clear down to here to get a stop. And all I'm asking is that, I don't know what the time frame is, and maybe you can find that out for me, is to hit just that one, and then come and hit those. Where we eliminate most of those ones. We just keep two right there so they still come around and then bam, they're out of there. That's just my thought and my opinion.
Right, so what we have proposed is that those stops would still be available for deviation. So if a person, say, who normally rides River to Bend and Begonia, if they call at least an hour in advance, they could get picked up at that destination.
But isn't that extra money?
It is extra money, right? Otherwise,
And if they're riding the bus.
if we still have include these stops, I don't know what the timing would be, but I'm guessing we either wouldn't be able to provide deviations at all on that route, or we may not be able to achieve the combined hours. So that's kind of where we would be at if we kept Paradise Valley.
Right?
And you said you had 7% support
Right.
of the decision made. I mean, obviously, the majority made that.
Right.
Okay, and you made the decisions to cut those out for specific reasons.
Right.
Low ridership.
It's probably not as much bang for your buck when it comes. Yeah, it's just low ridership for the amount of miles that it requires to get to that destination.
Okay.
I mean, when you look at how Casper's laid out, I can point to very significant portions of town that have no bus service.
Yeah, it doesn't
The
come
entire
right.
Oregon Trail area has no bus service. So you could make the argument that they all have to walk all the way to the end of the yellow route to get on the bus. Most of Sunrise has no bus service. The entire swath of town between Poplar and CY has no bus service. I mean, the reality is that the system is, as we're doing it, is going to have significant areas where people are going to have to walk to the bus until we get to the point where there's a lot more people riding buses.
Well, and in the appendix, Oregon Trail area has asked for a bus. And I don't know if it's ever been looked at, but in the appendix, they actually have asked for a bus route out there.
Sure. And I'm sure the people of Sunrise would like it too, as would the people in Eastgate, as would the people in North Casper. I mean,
South Casper doesn't have one.
go ahead, Chris.
I think it's important to remember that the prompting of this is a budgetary issue, and in order to provide service to the best areas that we can with the limited resources that we can, our initial request was a pretty significant cut on these things. We weren't willing to make that big of a commitment on cutting this bus service down, so we have a compromise. This isn't based on one neighborhood or the other. It's what we can afford to give with what we've got. And So there's a lot of places that could use them. And it's impossible to service them all.
I'm just saying, no matter what change you make, it's gonna inconvenience someone.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Clokey, wasn't it true that another justifying factor with regard to the changes on the yellow route was actually to improve ridership because the alternating hour decimated the ridership when it was implemented?
Yeah, exactly. Right now, yellow has roughly 24,000 riders a year, and that's half of blue. And it used to be, that's half of green, and it used to be more than green. The way it currently is now is those changes were implemented roughly 4 or 5 years ago, and it was an experiment not an experiment, but the goal was to provide greater coverage and add more bus stops to yellow, and at the same time try to decrease some costs. And ridership dropped dramatically, and now it's half of green. It's just under half of what it used to be, and so we feel that providing greater speed, and I think this will make it more user friendly. I think we can increase ridership by just focusing on the most popular destinations. And that was the goal here. Yeah.
Marcia, do you want to add anything more about these changes?
No, I just wanted to reiterate what Aaron said, that the change that we did to every other hour last 4 or 5 years ago decimated the yellow route. It really did. And these changes, all of the changes given together is going to affect someone negatively or positively either way. But I think, as city manager said, we came in with some really heavy cuts to begin with, eliminating Saturday service, reducing service hours. The council did not want to do that. They wanted us to be more efficient and save money, and that's what the goal was for these changes. They're, on the scale of things, they're really insignificant comparing to what we initially came in with. They really are.
Other comments?
I just want to thank them for their work that they put in, the effort, and I know there was some tough decisions to make. And I was heading to that meeting at the senior center, and I saw you guys meeting in there and everything. So I know there's many of those meetings. So I just want to say thank you for your hard work.
Thanks.
So would you be advocating for us to keep the every other hour then, Ken, and keep that loop in place? Those seem like the two choices that we have.
I know, and that's a tough one because, as they mentioned, before they did the every other hour, they had a lot of people riding. Then they chose to do the every other hour with the same loop, and they lost a lot of people. Where they want to go back to 1 hour, but also eliminating these stops, which could eliminate more people from wanting to ride. So then are we going to look at down the road 3, 4, 5 years from now eliminating more stops because of it, or adding those back in? Some of them I'm asking for 2, just to leave 2 on there for that loop. The rhino lining one and whatever else you got, I'm not that concerned, I guess. But just talking to some of the people through email and then also reading the appendix, that's why I want to keep it. So I don't know what the answer is. I'm just advocating for what I've read and what people have said.
Sean? Well, I think, yes, you're going to look at this periodically, maybe even more often than every 5 years, because economic changes, population changes, developmental changes in the city. So yeah, there are going to be stops added and taken out continuously, because this should be reviewed on a, maybe biannual basis. And I'd also like to point out the majority of the cost savings is from the yellow route.
Exactly.
$4,000 to $7,000 saved is from the yellow route. I don't see a big problem with it. as it is. And I live out there too. But changing just that one loop, I mean, as the mayor said, swaths all over the city that don't have bus coverage. So you're not gonna get 100%, you're not gonna get 100% that's gonna agree. We just have to do what we have to do.
I think we need to make a decision here. I guess thumbs up for the proposal as Aaron has given it to us with, I have to go with it too. I know there's a lot of work went into this. So, okay.
Thank you.
State liquor liability, over-serving, Mr. Henley.
Oh, thank you.
We were hoping we could talk about this more.
You know, we are gonna talk about it a little bit more now, and I'm gonna abbreviate my presentation because I see we're gonna be visiting this in the next 3 weeks or so. But if you remember, what came up is that we have these provisions. These are basically provisions under the police powers of the city so that we can control and regulate and protect public safety, health, morals, that type of thing. The question, though, became then not the police powers of the city, but are we somehow going to modify the negligence law of the state of Wyoming? The legislature has given us has given the liquor dealers a pass with respect to over-serving. They're saying there is no civil liability if you over-serve, as long as you over-serve legally. So the question then becomes, well, we are now saying that if you over-serve, that's illegal. Does that modify the state statute? So we looked at the case law on this, and I think we have talked with you a little bit before about the only thing that we see that would cause a liquor dealer to lose their protection under the state negligence prohibition would be if they serve minors. Basically, if they violate Title 12. Title 12 is the one we're looking to amend because that deals with all of the alcohol provisions. And so our ordinance that deals with that, that's what we're looking to amend. So in this case, we have a 2011 case, not that old under Wyoming standards, and you can see it's a serious case because we have two individuals here, two estates, because they were both killed in a car crash because some individual overdrank and killed them. Two people were killed by another man. He was also killed in the crash. He became intoxicated, consuming alcoholic beverages in a bar on Basin, and another one in Grable. Kind of oddly, the owners of both bars were the same people, and so he had drunk at both bars, was drunk at both times he drank at both bars, and he was continued to be provided alcohol. And so the estates of the families that were killed, they said, this isn't right, so we're going to bring a lawsuit saying that both Basin and Grable did have laws that in effect prevented over-serving. And I love the Grable language. It's unlawful for a saloon keeper to suffer any drunkenness in his or her premises. So I think that's great wording. So these were the two things that the Supreme Court were looking at. They basically decided, hey, look, these ordinances were violated. The question is then, are these ordinances going to be sufficient to make the bar owners legally, civilly liable for the deaths of these two individuals? So the question they looked at was, you have the state law, and it says, as long as you're serving legally, you have no liability for one of your patrons' actions. And then it goes on, and the subsequent provisions say the illegality is a violation, though, of Title 12, which would be serving the minors under another provision of the statute. So the argument of the plaintiff's attorneys were here is, can we bring a lawsuit based upon a violation of the local ordinances of Grable and Basin? So is it limited to just the Title 12, which we believe when we were drafting this proposed ordinance for your consideration is the case, or has it been expanded simply by the actions of the Casper City Council or the Grable City Council or the Basin City Council? So, question, legally provided, so it sounds right, and I can understand why people would believe that you're saying, well, if a liquor is legally provided, but it's not legal under your local ordinance, well, that should expand the liability. But the Supreme Court said no. We're gonna say this was adopted under Title 12, and so only a violation under Title 12 would be considered an illegal service. Basically, it's just underage. There's no allegation that the guy who did the drinking at the 2 bars was underage. So the question is, will there be any civil liability based upon the ordinances of the 2 cities? And the district court case, the trial court said no, there is none. They dismissed it. They said there was no cause of action. So this was how it was brought to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court agreed with the district court. They said that they still hold, because there was some prior case law too, and believe, and we conclude that the word legally in Title 12 was intended to be basically only referencing Title 12 itself. And under Title 12, we're just talking about service to minors. And that's why you'll see if you're an insurance person at all, that's what the insurance that they provide to these bar owners is for. So that if they get hit with the service because a minor goes out and kills somebody while driving intoxicated, then they have some type of liability protection. We are not trying to set a negligent standard here by the ordinance, and the Supreme Court says basically, even if you wanted to, we're not going to let you. They have authorized police powers in the state statutes, as you know. In fact, they are, again, kind of some older language in that, you know, the governing bodies of cities and towns may regulate saloons, they can regulate any conduct that disturbs or jeopardizes public health, safety, or the peace. So you have authority to do that. One other matter, though, which the Supreme Court looks at a lot of times when they're looking as to whether or not a Supreme Court case should be overruled, and Councilman Huber brought this up. It was a 3-2 decision in this case, but this was decided in 2012. Ever since then, the statute has been looked at time and time again, Title 12. In fact, in 2016, 30 sections of Title 12 were amended. In 2017, 27 sections of Title 12 were amended. But none of those amendments, in all of the years since 2011, have ever changed the language which the Supreme Court relied upon to find that municipal ordinances aren't going to override state statute. And so it seems pretty clear in looking at the usual constraints of jurisprudence that the ordinances that you adopt are not going to make any difference as to whether or not liquor dealers lose their liability under state law. I did have one other, I was asked to address one other topic while I am here, and that is whether the event center and golf course, because we have issued licenses to them, if they would be subject to some type of police power liability and or Title 12 liability if they in fact serve minors. And indeed, under the proposed ordinance, they would be liable as any other liquor license dealer. Yes, sir.
The city of Casper would be liable?
Steve Casper on this license would be not for the overserve. Again, that would be the person who's actually making the overserve. But we would have potential liability if we were to serve a minor and the minor went out and crashed.
But with the proposed ordinance, it says bar owners as well could be held liable. So as the owner of the liquor license, why wouldn't the city be held liable?
Well, I mean, the city, basically the license, the city council could say, we don't believe that the license is being used appropriately at the golf course, and so you would be held liable in that regard. But under the overserve ordinance, it's basically a person. If you remember, we talked about that after the last work session to make it more clear that we're not talking about some type of broad liability. We're just talking about the person serving. So the overserve license, overserve provision is basically a tool for the servers to use. You look, let's have a glass of water, have some food. That I think is the intent of it. And so that you actually giving them some help as opposed to hindrance, so that they can actually take care of their patrons and take care of people out on the street. Any
Questions for John? Mike?
Well, I don't have so much a question, but just a comment on that. The only cloud that I see on the horizon that of what John's presenting here about this liability is that Supreme Court case was indeed a 3-2 decision. The dissent is not attached to this that you got here, but in that dissent, Justice Hill and Kite both said that, and they just went through and they said basically giving these words legally served their Webster dictionary meaning, that in essence, if you violated these city ordinances, you were not legally serving them. Because, and if, you know, if the Supreme Court, you know, it's a 3-2 decision, and in my humble opinion, I think Justice Kite and Hill were both very good, strong justices. If that, you know, goes back up to the Supreme Court, you know, it's like I always said, when you got to trust your fate to a judge, you better worry. But that's only clouds that I see on the horizon. You know, having said all that, it sounds like I'm kind of opposed to the ordinance as it now stands regarding regulating serving people that are drunk. I'm not. You know, I really think that we need to do something about making sure people responsibly serve these things, and I think it's different than somebody at McDonald's selling Big Macs to someone that's overweight or something. Now, alcohol is a different thing.
What about the?
I think Kristen was waiting.
The only thing I was going to say is, I guess to me it is a little bit different though, because the estates went after the bars. They didn't go after the servers. Is that correct?
Right.
So I mean, I guess to me, like, that is a different element of, they went after the bar owners. They didn't go after the individuals who served him.
Well, that's right. And if all this, in essence, caved in and went the way that I would not want it to go in a liability thing, that you'd be going after, an estate would be going after the bar owner. They would not be going after the server. The only thing with the server is that, you know, it would be our criminal thing. If the server had deep pockets, you know, they'd probably come after them too. But
Folks, we're gonna have to do this in a work session, probably our next work session ahead of the next meeting. So I think we should reserve our debate unless you want something you want.
No, I mean, the whole thing's ridiculous in my opinion. I mean, we don't punish a minimum wage cashier at Sportsman's Warehouse for selling a murder weapon, so why would you punish a minimum wage bartender for serving?
Well, I wonder if you would though, if somebody went and said, I'm gonna go murder somebody with this, or I'm inclined to do that, and then you sold it to them. I mean, I wonder if that liability is there as a distinction.
But I don't, where does personal responsibility come in?
We're gonna have this discussion in our work session in 2 weeks, because obviously we have to spend more time on it. And we're gonna have to have the chief again tell us about the statistics and the impetus for the ordinance in the first place. And at some point we're gonna have to decide, but let's discuss it in 2 weeks, and then we will have it tabled until the week following for second reading. Okay. Thank you, John. Council goal discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. A year ago, roughly, council sat down in kind of a special meeting setting and discussed the direction that they wanted to give staff as it relates to the next year. Typically what happens is staff gets that direction, and we try to take our time to identify the various things that we think need to be done or could be done or whatever to meet those requests that council has had. So in other words, council takes the time to identify the larger, sort of broader objectives that you would like to see, the end results that you're looking for, and then we put together sort of the meat on the bones as it relates to the means to get to those end results. We have passed out sort of the full version, the unabridged version of what those goals looked like after staff worked on them and put them together. We boiled that down for display right here in your meeting room back in March when we put all that work together. And now we're at the point where A, we need to follow up with you as to report how we did, and B, we need to get your direction again and see what it is that this sitting council, which effectively has a 2-year oversight, would like to see happen. Last year we kind of had a year left, if you will, with regard to the current council of the day. At this point, you've got 2 years to work together and get things accomplished and do awesome things as a group. And we want to help you do that. We just need to know how you want us to help you. By way of following up, you'll recall that your broad goals that you put together, again, are captured here, which dealt with public safety, it dealt with 1% in education, it dealt with increasing opportunities for public engagement, and the development of long-term sustainability for infrastructure and the appropriate coordination, particularly with regard to the plans and so forth that you've put a lot of money into developing. Just to give you a kind of a highlight on some of the things that we were able to accomplish under those broad directives that you gave us. With regard to increasing and enhancing public engagement, you will be seeing here very soon an app that will be coming out with regard to engaging the public more appropriately with services that they need help with issues that they need information on, and I would say more proactive communication through technological means that are appealing to our public these days. We've also heightened substantially our social media presence based on feedback we gathered from the current council face-to-face and other directives that you provided in those days. Not to mention we have coordinated much more significantly the 45 social media presence or representations that we have out there. From the aspect of public safety, we've done a lot, in my opinion, with regard to training, with regard to readiness as it relates to the fire department in particular, and the significant effort they've taken to map buildings and be better prepared with regard to what buildings we have out there and what needs they have and what issues they have in terms of getting in there and getting out of there safely. We've taken great strides with regard to peer support, crisis intervention. As you all know too, huge leaps, in my opinion, with regard to campus presence and the officers we have in the schools. I really appreciate what the attorney's office has done. They've implemented an ankle bracelet program wherein we pay $15 a day for the maintenance of those pieces of equipment compared to $150 a day of sticking somebody in jail. And obviously an alternative to that type of sentencing. I really appreciate the role that the prosecutors have taken to go into the police department and do much more face-to-face training with regard to more effective prosecutions. I think you should know too that we've been able to take on cases the DA wouldn't take on as it relates to substance abuse and so on, and the attorney tells me that they are 100% in those convictions, and I think that's impressive. I really appreciate the work that we've done in regards to consolidating and integrating the multiple plans and master plans and so on that the city has put together and built over the years, and putting it to the capital plans that we obviously present to you every year. We also are including a higher number of stakeholders in those discussions that aren't necessarily city related. And I would even say we're engaging more citizens in that discussion as well. You should also know, and I certainly can't say that the city can take full responsibility for this. I wouldn't, but 1% passed at its highest rating ever of support from the community, and to me that's laudable for the community overall to have developed that type of relationship to the city, wherein, in my opinion, the stewardship with regard to those tax dollars are very positive. That's just a smattering of things that have occurred as a result of, at least in part, the direction that you gave a year ago. I think it's a positive report. I think we've done what we said we would do, and we've got more to do. Some things are ongoing. We still have more work to take care of. What I'd like to know is where we go from here. You're a new council. You've got new directives probably. Maybe you have continuing directives that you'd like to see embraced by the staff and our supportive committees that are out there. But I can't necessarily get that without us taking a very direct process wherein we get that from you and we move forward from there.
Chris?
Well, I think we need to establish what our top priorities are. For me, I would like to see, I appreciate everything you're talking about, but it lacks substance. And so you may have it, it's just offhand you can't tell. Engaging citizens more. How much? And then we can hear the good report, but I didn't hear anything about what we need to work on. So goals and objectives that are measurable. So done a lot of training, done this many hours of training, and that doesn't necessarily all have to come to us, but I think it should come to you so that if there were a question, you could say, great strides in peer support. No, we have offered this level of training to this many people. These have accepted it. Then we measure what our successes and our failures are, and then in that's we want to enhance our social media, because that's what you'll get from us is a broader thing. What's that really mean? Well, how many hits are on the site? How many different types of social media are out there? And this one doesn't work. So we scratch that, divert energies over to where it's functional or effective. And that's the kind of stuff I would like to see it boiled down to. But we have to collectively, establish the 2019 goals. And do we have a special work session for that?
I think that's really your question, isn't it? What is the process we're going to follow to revise this, if it needs to be revised? Is that the deal? Any suggestions? Last time we did a retreat. So, not saying we should or we shouldn't, but that's what we did.
I think it's important that we do get together and do some planning of what that looks like. I don't know what that would entail, what that looks like this year. It kind of all depends. Is it a 2-night thing? What does it look like? I guess we need to kind of come up with that idea of how we do that.
We have talked about trying to do it within the context of this meeting, but there's so many things that have to be dealt with that how do you set aside enough time to really have a serious conversation about those things?
I would recommend that we designate a work session just for that, not do facilitators, not make everybody buy us dinner and set up tables and all that. We do it right here among ourselves.
Just keep everything else off that agenda.
Or add one if we need to. It kind of depends on what the ongoing needs of the city are as far as a lot of the work session.
Other thoughts on how to go about this, Kristen?
Just for reference, since I don't have historical knowledge, how long last year did it take you guys as a group to establish the goals?
It's an all-day thing, the all-night thing.
It was a couple of days. 2, I think.
I can't be doing this too long.
It was at the event center. That one was at the event center, the one before was at Fort Casper.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
How long was it?
Well, I think it was unnecessarily drug out with the facilitators and all that kind of stuff, so if we're gonna pay people to come in, we're all grown, we can take care of this.
How many hours did we spend on this last time? Just
We did 2 nights. Last week we did 2 nights where I can't remember, 5 o'clock I think, 4 or 5 o'clock, and we
They were late.
here till about 8. It was about 4 or 5 hour, 2 nights, 4 or 5 hours. We've done them when we've done all day ones as well, where we've done planning on it. So I mean, it does take, depending upon what we're trying to do and how we're doing it, can take some time to plan that. And I'm not sure if it can be done in one work session. Would be my concern. And I know that we've got to be careful in how our time, as far as city issues and things like that. That would be my only concern, is trying to do it in one work session. It might have to be spread out over a couple work sessions or something in that sense, if that's what we're looking at.
other thoughts on how to get this done, Chris?
We take the end of a work session, each of us just make a list of priorities, because they're gonna overlap. Burden somebody in the staff to combine all the ones that are common, and not discuss them at that, we'll just submit them. See which ones are common and then which ones we need to talk about. We'll pull that list down pretty good, and I bet we could do it in about 1 if we did that preparation.
Steve?
We're building off of what we have here, correct?
Or changing.
Or changing.
Yeah, we could start from scratch.
So, well, I don't want to start from scratch, but I guess the question, and this may be tedious to ask, but you have a bunch of things on here that says, like, talking about public engagement, finalized website refreshed by June 30th. There's a bunch of dates in here that things are going to be accomplished. Is there a way of compiling all that to show, did we hit those dates with these things, where are we at with each of these, and maybe get that ahead of time so that if it's a non-issue, we just don't deal with it. I mean, it would help us prioritize what needs to be.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, and it kind of harkens back to Councilman Walsh's comments as well. We absolutely have that data, and we could certainly provide that data to you. Because the goals are very much date-driven, and so on. It's just a matter of telling us what you want to see. It's kind of like a budget book. We provide you a whole ton of data, and we try to boil the message down and the directives down as near as we can to where we need to go based on what you'd like to see. So, yeah, you bet. Just tell us what you want. We'll make it happen.
I'm not too excited about trying to do it at the end of a work session. I guess I would ask you all, how would you feel if, after we finish all of this, we said, okay, now it's time for us to do our strategic planning tonight?
I think a special,
I don't
at
know
least
if I'd
a
have,
special
I
work
think you'd
session.
come up with a pretty poor work product.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was just gonna say that I think having a special work session would be a good way of doing it, and I think that taking this as a framework and, you know, go along and, because some of these things are things that are gonna be ongoing projects. Some of them are things that are still open and on the table because they're still open and on the table. We're working on them. And that some of them have already been accomplished. Go through and check them off, and then figure out, you know, what do we want to put in for other things to work on. I know, you know, like I was talking to the mayor the other day, traffic planning is a big thing for me, and, you know, trying to plan orderly growth and you know, future roads and that kind of stuff. I'd like to see something in a strategic plan about that. But at a special work session, I think would be the way to do it. I hate calling things a retreat because that conjures up all day and suffering through. You know, and facilitators, you know, sometimes it's good to have a facilitator to sit there and guide the discussion.
Chris likes trust falls.
If you all remember,
Chris
I
likes
just
the
did
trust
a
fall.
I nominate
Let's
Chris
go
as the
around the room. Everybody
facilitator.
tell me how you're feeling before we get started. What's your favorite
See,
color?
he knows everything to do. He's the perfect guy to do it.
I want you all to be comfortable. No, I want you to be effective and efficient. Be
You're
uncomfortable if you
blushing.
want. Yeah.
I'd like to think we could do it in one evening, but I don't know if we can do it in this format where we basically take one of our Thursdays or one of our Tuesdays.
I think it's gotta be a special session, as well, like a Monday or something.
I would recommend during a week, not on a weekend,
Yeah.
a special session with that opportunity for some prep beforehand, and then give careful consideration to where the budget stuff is starting to line out, because that will soon become very consuming. And this should tie directly to the budget. So have it beforehand.
If we're not going to hire a facilitator, would anyone volunteer to be the, you have to have somebody run a meeting.
Well, I would volunteer, Mr. Mayor, but we all voted for you.
Well, I thought we were
I didn't know
pointing
this
to
was part of the job.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, how far do we want to go with this tonight? Did you agree in concept, set a time?
Let's agree in concept. Take
Okay.
recommendations.
Do we
from
want
you
to,
on how it
do we
fits
want to
in.
try to do this before we start the budget process? If
Mr.
so,
Mayor.
yeah, we kind of
I
need to
think
be
we have to,
picking a date.
yeah.
It's best.
I would absolutely suggest that this is your start to your budget process. Your council goal, you know, the things that you identify as important to you really do have budget connections and ties, and Councilman Walsh is right. It drives a lot of what we do by way of budget development. Correct.
Well, let's, how about we keep this on our agenda for 2 weeks from today? People can think about it a little bit. And it's been a while since I've run something like this, but there's got to be some templates we could follow. Because I'm not necessarily in favor of getting a facilitator either, if we can do this amongst ourselves. Mike?
But if I understood correctly, we're gonna kind of be starting to delve into the budget business in March. So that would imply that we should do this sometime in February. So if we don't, and I thought I heard everybody preferring a Monday night, if we don't pick a date now, you know, if we wait two weeks from now to pick a date, then it's gonna be locked into basically one, we're gonna have a choice of one.
We want to suggest a Monday?
February 11th.
Works for me.
Any comments on February 11th?
For me?
That works for me.
I can make it work.
I mean,
Time?
in it, well, time. What did we do last time? 5 p.m.,
Yeah, I think we started about 5:30.
5:30? 5:30 to 8:30? Now, the argument that's been made to have it somewhere else is it just kind of, I don't know, creates a different mindset that you're not doing your usual business because you're in a different location. I don't know how important that is. We did it over at Fort Casper. We did it at the Event Center. I don't have a strong opinion.
It seems silly to me that we basically go rent a facility, get some in-kind services kicked to us, purchase a meal, and then talk about not doing the business we regularly do, and that's exactly what we're doing.
So you're saying here.
I'm perfectly comfortable here.
Anybody else have an opinion about where to meet?
The event center or Fort Casper sound, either one of those sound good to me.
Chris is saying right.
We're gonna get
Right
us
here,
get
right.
sandwiches or something.
Bring your own sandwich.
Yeah, bring our lunch, yeah, I don't care,
I
but.
want to go to Mike Reed's place. Can we go there?
I don't think they have a whiteboard.
My only concern here is this room is a little bit small for, if we wanna spread things out or. I know that Councilman Walsh is gonna wanna pin things up on the wall.
We gotta get sticky notes in the color of your mood.
If we use for Casper, is there a cost to the city?
We will not have to pay a cost.
Ray, what do you guys want to meet?
Right here.
Ray?
I'm happy to meet, I think anywhere. I think where we're working is being able to do it. I mean, since I've been on council, we've always gone away from here. We can try it, see if it is conducive to trying to get it done, and if it doesn't elicit any good ideas, and hopefully for strategic planning, then we can always look at the next year and be like, didn't work out. So I'm willing to try it here.
Can you guys help me come up with a template if I'm the one who's going to be stuck doing this?
Absolutely, yeah.
Or did we set on a time at 5 o'clock that we're
5:30 to 8:30, I thought is what was said.
is that what we're doing?
February 11th on Monday.
Okay.
5:30.
Bring your own dinner or get a cup of cashews.
We'll bring some cookies to keep it sweet.
I'd be willing even to bring food for everybody, since Sid doesn't have to do that. It's okay. I mean, I think I get what we're trying to do here, but it's also about this council trying to figure out and working together, and that we can be colleagues and we can be friends and we can try to do that. I think we shouldn't lose sight of that also for this planning. And I'm not trying to sit and say that we need to be fluffy or anything like that, but I think we need to understand too that we can work together and be colleagues and dare I say it, even break bread and to sit and to say we have a common goal of making this Casper a better place. So I don't think we should steer too far from that.
Okay, the 11th, 5:30 here. Okay. Okay, now we're going to try this little experiment here where item number 7 is agenda review. It's actually, I'm thinking about it as agenda planning. The agenda for the 12th, February 12th is already established. I think we obviously need to add the liquor license ordinance to that agenda again and leave it alone and start looking at the 26th of February. Now you all have this sheet here that has the proposed work session agenda items. Now my thought is that this is an initial list that's been compiled, but that other people in this group have other concerns that they may want to add to this to-do list. I know I have several of my own that I'm going to hold on to for a later time, but the idea would be we start picking things off of here to put on the 26th or propose other things that would go on the 26th of February. So, does anybody want to suggest an item? I know, well, actually I have one that I think we need to talk about, and then I'll hear from the other people. I'm sure you're all aware that there is a bill going through the legislature right now on the allowing community colleges to grant 4-year degrees. This would be a really big deal.
That was voted down by committee.
Oh, is it? I didn't see that.
Mr. Mayor, there's actually 2 bills that are similar in nature. You're thinking about House Bill 250 that is failed. House Bill 111 is. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just looked it up, if that's okay. 111 passed the Senate today and it moves on to the House. 250 died, but it's been reintroduced under a different number and slightly different tonight. So we still have 2 bills dealing with community colleges and 4-year degrees.
Of similar intent.
I bring it up because it seems appropriate for us to write a letter of support from the council, that this would be a positive thing for our community, and that we would like to see this move forward. So, but as always, when you're dealing with legislation, time is of the essence. So, any opinions about whether we should do that? What that letter would say? If you do?
Sounds like a good plan.
I can help if need be, since, I mean, only, 6-7 years ago, that was me making that decision of having to move and uproot instead of being able to sit here, so.
you had to go down to Laramie to finish your degree, yeah.
What-
That happens all the time.
What's the difference in the bills? Do you know what the difference is? I think one of them was applied science degrees specifically. Is there,
Julie?
if you know, I don't know.
Here's what I do know, Your Honor, Mayor. The SF 111 is the applied science baccalaureate degree, and so you wouldn't have to do all the extra psychology 101, anything like that to get a baccalaureate degree in that. The SF 250, now I haven't read the reintroduction, but it's reintroduced with a slight change, so whatever that is, I'm not sure. But what that was about was allowing not only the applied science baccalaureate, but certain baccalaureate degrees that apply to this area. I don't know, they didn't name them from what I read, but I would give an example of for example, like maybe a petroleum engineering degree, because Casper is oil related. So that's the subtle difference.
Okay.
As I
Well, it would give us a foothold, basically, to start this process, so that hopefully more would be added over time.
Right, and the idea being it's a 4-year degree, and so consequently, the University of Wyoming is not really excited about community colleges in Wyoming having those opportunities, and that's the pushback that likely your representatives will get,
Of course.
if indeed we ask them to move forward, and I certainly would recommend that we do.
So how do we go about getting a letter drafted and approved by all of us in time to make a difference, hopefully?
We can, Mr. Mayor, we can certainly put something together, and if council's comfortable with the basic concept of what the letter would say, we could just authorize him to do that.
You guys all trust the language to Carter and his staff?
Yeah, I was gonna say, just recommend an intent instead of trying to email a public
Yeah.
meeting issues
You-
and that kind of
let's-
stuff.
I'll just,
Great.
let me know when it's ready and I'll sign it, and it'll be what it is. Okay, good.
Perfect.
I guess that doesn't have to be on our agenda for 2 weeks, because we did it tonight, so. Okay, other items that need to be discussed in work sessions. Ray?
I know at the end of last year I brought up about you and I and Carter had met with the council about the council on people with disabilities. And so I'd like to see if we could get that on a work session. And for the new members, I think you guys might have been here maybe when you were sitting. We had met with a couple people and talking about that, because Cheyenne has a mayor's council on people with disabilities. And they wanted to see if there was a possibility of starting something like that here in Casper from the city standpoint. And so I think we were going to try to have a work session on that. I tentatively asked, but I'd like to see if we can try to put that on. It doesn't have to be any time. It's not like a critical thing, but I'd like to see if we can get that on.
I think Carter would like that sooner rather than later, if I'm correct. Other things that need to be on our, Sean?
Well, we had that meeting with the judge, Councilman Huber, and the mayor, myself. She has a lot of things that she would like to go over with the council, changes and things like that, so I think that needs to be put on the work session as well.
Okay. Anything on the current list, as we add things to the list, anything on the current list that people want to be sure that we talk about soon? Steve? Because we're talking about the 26th first. What are we going to put on the 26th?
So under staff suggested items, the wages.
You're probably going to need some time to prepare that, though, I assume.
Mr. Mayor, I think we could be ready by the 12th of February, though, if that pleases the council.
Well, we're actually planning the 26th. We could put something on the 12th.
Oh, okay.
If there's room, but we were going to leave that to its current. My thinking was we were going to be 4 weeks ahead each time. So
Whatever you
we had
like.
enough
There's
time.
only 3 things on the 12th.
And the liquor
Do you want it?
license.
Well, we have the liquor license ordinance, and that,
Oh,
who
that's
knows
right.
how long that's going to take.
Yeah, you're right.
And we really need to get that done if we're going to do something. Okay, so
No problem. For the 26th.
put that on the, you want to do wages on the 26th?
Absolutely.
I think that's a real priority, so.
You betcha.
And what else should go on the 26th? Do you want to put the Disability Council on the 26th, or do you see other things that are more pressing?
Well, that shouldn't be very controversial. We should be able to deal with that fairly quickly.
Okay, let's figure out who's going to be on it. and-
did we decide, are we gonna put a report from the municipal court on the 26th?
We could.
I think that would be a good idea to be done, yeah, because there are some items there that are
Pressing.
pretty pressing that I think everybody needs to be aware of.
Okay.
And work that's being done there to address those.
How full is our agenda at this point, Chris?
Well, you got the Plains RFP, and I'm assuming that will be closed out after the 13th of this month, and we would like to move that property.
Try to get that done.
I would put that on priority over municipal court if that's, or at the same time, it shouldn't take much discussion.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be bids, right? You see?
Plains on the 26th? Is that enough for the 26th?
Thanks.
Okay. Good enough. I guess that wasn't so difficult. So that's what I'll plan on doing at each work session is plan the meeting 4 weeks ahead. And so, again, if you have other things you think we need to talk about, that's when we can bring those things up. And as long as we get 5 thumbs that belongs on the work session agenda, we'll put it on the list, and we may even put it on a schedule. Okay?
Do you mind if I ask a question? We had proposed the health plan update for February 26th. Under staff suggested item.
Okay.
It's okay with me if we want to bump that out, but I just wanted to.
Is there a decision point on that needs to be done? Is it time sensitive?
It certainly is budget sensitive, and so
Right.
pushing it much past March, for example, would be untenable for us. But
What all do we have on the 26th of the 4 things that
We put the disability council creation, municipal court revisions,
Plains.
Claims and wages.
raise and wages.
Why don't we move, could we move the council on disability to the
I
one?
think if she knows it's going to be on the agenda, we can relax about that a little bit.
So we're okay.
Why don't we, I mean, there's no reason why we couldn't put that on the next work session agenda and put it right there, so
Agreed, yeah.
let's put that on the first work session in March,
Yep.
Which one?
the disability
Okay.
council.
Yeah, we'll do that one in March.
We haven't had one, we've never had one, so there's no urgency.
Yeah, I think we're good.
So,
Okay.
put the health plan on the 26th?
yeah, let's put the health plan on.
That way, yeah, so it doesn't get part of our work.
I appreciate that.
And then I guess, I'm hoping that this becomes a working document that evolves over time, and that really becomes a pretty important piece of paper that we're working with every 2 weeks.
So we're saying March 12th for the disability?
Yep.
And we'll fill out the rest of the 12th when we meet on February 12th. Or we'll fill out the rest of March 12th on February 12th.
Mr. Mayor, the other thing is, for the 26th, you'll notice on your proposed work session item, the sanitary sewer interceptor state revolving fund loan application is due in early March, and we really don't want to move forward with the application without you and the council being fully aware of what that's all about. And so we may be able to move that back to the 12th, because the 26th is stacked pretty well now.
How much time do you think you need for that?
Not much time. I think in my opinion, it's a pretty easy sell.
Put on the 12th then.
Let's just do it next time.
Okay, very good. That sounds good. Thank you.
Good enough. Legislative updates. Anything you'd like to tell us about LLC, since I'm not in that group anymore? Carter, and
Sure.
give us an update on what's happening
Well,
from a WAM perspective.
absolutely. There's a bunch of moving parts, to quote a recent testimony here, with regard to the legislative activities down in Cheyenne. Some of it I've tried to email you as much as I can, because again, it happens quick, and like, for example, the dispersal of some of those college bills came up just within the hour that we've been sitting here together. It's just very, very fast moving target kind of a thing. And so much of what we talked about in the legislative committee meetings unfortunately changed dramatically between then and now. A couple things I want you to be aware of though, and I'd love to get your take on things. We do have a lot of budget bill discussions taking place, even though we're not in a budget bill session, if you will. One of which deals directly with the Wyoming Business Council. And there's a lot of talk about defunding significantly the Wyoming Business Council. The problem for us is that if indeed they do that, a couple of very significant projects for us lay in the balance of what could happen, depending on how much money they do remove and so on. And so what I'd really like to be able to do is encourage our legislators to resist the temptation to decimate the budget for the Business Council in that, you know, particularly for Casper and other communities around the state, they do have granting opportunities that would likely not be replaced or available to cities and towns otherwise. For us, that would mean Midwest Avenue and the Platte River restoration would likely need to be completely halted in its progress, which would be hurtful for us, particularly as it relates to working in partnership with the state and the building project that they are anticipating upsizing utilities in order to accommodate that structure. So my request would be that we support keeping the Business Council funded to the extent that they can, so that indeed projects aren't lost, not only for Casper but around Wyoming.
It's been critical. It's one of the only ways we have to fund big projects.
I agree.
You need a thumbs up from us, and I don't think that's controversial.
Okay, thank you. Another thing that's come up recently, and by now may be a completely different animal, but House Bill 271 deals with the fire department's ability to collectively bargain. One of the provisions that are being discussed right now is that provision of the binding arbitration feature that you probably read some email from me about. We here in Casper don't have the same issues that many municipalities and departments have around the state, where binding arbitration is a fairly routine scenario, and many cities and towns feel like they've been beat over the head by arbiters who make decisions that are binding. So the feeling around the state is if that sort of hammer wasn't hanging over the negotiations with regard to cities and towns and departments, it would be a little easier to get through a lot of those conversations. Again, here in Casper, we've had one binding arbitration decision that we can find any history on, and that was back in 1990. So in my opinion, we've worked really well together and worked really hard to develop a relationship that avoids that kind of thing. But it is hard to ignore the fact that not having that hammer, if you will, hang over the heads of the cities, you know, would be nice. So I wouldn't be a good witness for that type of a legislation because, again, we don't have that issue much here in Casper. But looking at it from a broader perspective, I can see why it'd be attractive to cities and towns.
And other places that have been much more contentious, like
Correct.
Sheridan.
Positively.
Anything we need to do?
Well, if you're okay with my taking that sort of representation when these conversations come around, I think that's really all I'm asking.
I got a couple of real quick questions. If they take out the binding arbitration as a last resort step, what do they replace that with?
Non-binding arbitration. And so the arbiter would still meet, the department and the city would still meet with an arbiter, and those decisions would be rendered to the council who gets the final say.
So
City council.
Cities that are objecting to the binding arbitration, they feel that the arbiter has gone in favor of the firefighters against the city?
Either that, Mr. Mayor, Councilman, have made decisions that A, are cumbersome for the city to bear, or B, objectionable because it removes council's authority with regard to a decision one way or the other. It's the idea.
And you're saying that you're gonna take what kind of a position on that? I wasn't, it was hard for me to follow what you were gonna do.
I wouldn't be a good witness with regard to the benefits of not having binding arbitration with real-life examples that the city of Casper has gone through.
Okay, so you're saying that from our perspective, the current law works?
Well,
Or
but I'm also saying that without that hammer over the negotiation process, I do think it makes it a little more fluid from a city or a town perspective.
Mr. Mayor, I think it's easiest to look at this through this perspective. What if the police department and the planning department came in and said, we would like to enact a union and bind you to committed negotiations with us? We'd be sitting back saying it's ridiculous. So I support the fact that we'd rather not have that. I know that we haven't had a problem with the fire department in the past, but it's an issue away, right? No one else gets that protection, so.
You're handing the authority over to somebody we don't even know.
Well, yeah, and we've seen how unions can be destructive, and go ask Detroit how well that served them.
So you would want to basically say it can work fine without binding arbitration.
That's my position.
Okay.
You could even say it works perfectly fine in Casper, where we haven't ever had a contentious issue and we don't need it, and we wouldn't support anybody else unionizing and coming in, and we wouldn't welcome them.
Okay, anybody have a problem with the Carter going forward and saying we can get along fine without it? Okay, all right.
And the only other thing that I wanted to bring up during the legislative review, if I could, the skilled nursing facility is getting hot and heavy in its conversation down in Cheyenne. It very much is not in Casper's favor at this point, but nonetheless, I feel inclined to want to continue in the discussion. And so the other thing that I would invite is the veterans on the council to continue to participate as well, to the extent that you can. Obviously, you've got daytime commitments and that kind of thing, because this would be a Cheyenne conversation. And so if you think about that and let me know, that'd be great. We do have, I can't tell from your notes when the next meeting is.
Wednesday, February 6th. It's at
Likely to be late after.
adjournment, so probably leave about noon. I'll be ready to go at about 3. It's going to be at the Military Affairs Committee in the Senate, and so we'll have to give testimony, and we're focusing where the true heart of this is, and the true heart of this, Your Honor, is what is best for Wyoming veterans in the state. Our veterans have earned this benefit they are not receiving. Where can they best receive the best care in their last days, basically, because a skilled nursing facility is not a fun time. It is a skilled nursing facility requiring a lot of care. So Wednesday, then it will go to the floor, provided it comes out of the committee saying Casper or not. It goes to the floor the next day, so we will need to travel again on Thursday. We don't know what time. The Senate convenes at usually 10 o'clock in the morning, and then again on Friday, and likely again on Monday the 11th.
So that's not to say, though, that council would need to, that would participate, would need to commit 3 days out of their week to staying down there. But the committee testimony, I think, is really critical.
Which is the 6th.
That'd be the 6th, late afternoon. Yep.
have we talked to the VFW, American Legion, any of those veterans groups about getting on board with this?
Boy, we have, and I tell you, Mr. Mayor, Councilman, we are putting together a contingent to participate, and we're hopeful that it won't be just Casper veterans, but indeed veterans from at least our portion of the state.
Is it in Sheridan now? Is that where it finally ended up? after you guys announced Buffalo, it immediately switched to Sheridan. Is how fast it switched around. So I don't know if it's gone and been moved again.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, it appears to be staying in Buffalo for now. The House killed any amendments for Casper or Sheridan, and so it might come out of committee with a different location, but at this point it's stuck in Buffalo.
Okay.
Have you reached out to any of the medical fields, especially the private medical fields here in Casper? And the reason why I ask that is that talking with my wife about this one here, most of the doctors and the VA people that they talk to think that it would be better here in Casper because it's centrally located, like she brought up and we brought up, you know, going from Evanston all the way to Buffalo, where Casper's centered. And a lot of the, from what she has gathered, not only VA, but a lot of the doctors around here are very much in support of this as well. So have you gone out and touched bases with any of them?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, we have indeed. We hope that we will have that level of testimony which you identified is really critical with us in Cheyenne. And again, we're hoping that it will be not only just Casper professionals, but area professionals also. Because we think that recommendation exists not only in Casper, but in surrounding areas as well.
Other comments on this?
The only thing, so I mean, as far as like discussing this with people, is that comment period, could anybody go down there? As far as like, you know, doctors or veterans or anyone we know? Okay.
Absolutely,
Sure.
absolutely,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman. A regular citizen, a
Yep.
veteran, a medical professional.
I've just got some people.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. You betcha.
And so we'll go for it. Let's not look back and say, I wonder if we could have done more.
Yeah, I agree.
Because
Well,
once
thank
it's
you.
done, it's done, so. Okay,
Thank you very
anything
much.
else?
No, that covers it. I
Okay.
appreciate it, yep.
You know, we are almost on our agenda, I'd like to point out. So, there is one other thing that's not on this agenda, and it's our committee assignments. So you all have this handout here. And we've got some, still have some unfilled assignments. Some are less critical than others. Let's see, if you go to this page here, you can see in red the volunteers that we still need. I don't think we need a second rep on the leadership board. That's a mistake. So we don't have anyone on the CATSI board that meets Monday at 2. And then we need another OYD advisory committee member at 4 o'clock on Monday.
I can take that.
And then you can see what how much work everyone's agreed to do to take on this sheet here, to try to be as equitable as we can be with how much the time commitments that everyone's making. And then just to make this even a little more challenging, I went to the health department monthly meeting, and they were very appreciative to have someone from the city council there, and we haven't had anyone there for a long time. We give them over $500,000 to run that department, and they meet at 5:30 on Wednesday.
Who does?
The health department.
5:30 on Wednesday, 5:30 p.m.
Yes.
I'd be a little bit late, but I'd take them.
You take that, Kenneth, and him, I think they'd appreciate having someone there. Okay.
Where is it?
It's at the health department. It's not on here.
It's not on.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it's really something we should have a rep on, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We need the OID contractors, and that's the contractors licensing and appeals board. That is, they don't meet every third Thursday, though, do they?
What does it say on it?
It says every third Thursday.
Yes.
Does
They
meet.
meet monthly. The third Thursday, like at what, 4?
4 o'clock.
Yes. Every month.
And then the utilities advisory board. Are those required to have council members there?
Dallas Councilman Laird was on it. He showed up for one meeting. It's nice to have some council
On your
representation.
utilities one.
Yeah, the CPU advisory board.
And he was also on ours for contractors licensing, and that was helpful also.
Mm-hmm.
For the utilities advisor board? Is that what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
I'll take that one.
That's the one Daniel enjoyed so much.
No, I could do the contractor's licensing one, if we need to.
Oh, you can do that? I'll join Bob on the OID. Are you getting all this, Jolene?
I am, sir.
And what else do you need?
Or he said he was.
Steve said
he was.
Oh, you've already got that?
Yeah.
OID? Okay, good enough.
Okay, so who-
Appreciate that.
Your Honor,
Yes.
tell me who that was again?
Steve was gonna do OID.
Okay.
Catsy.
Charlie, Central Wyoming Senior Services meets on the 4th Monday too. We got the same time, or otherwise I would do Catsy, but
I can do cats.
Okay.
4th Monday.
Fourth Monday then.
All right, and we don't need leisure services, so did we got contractors licensing and Casper utilities and OID.
On the front page, there's a box on council finance committee.
On this page?
Sorry, the
First page.
Yeah.
they need a 4th.
Oh, that we need a 4th. I'll do that.
Your Honor, which
Yes,
one?
I'll do that. The council finance committee, because we need 4 people.
Charlie,
And yes, Catsy, Sean's gonna do Catsy.
Oh, you're doing
on the air service and the code enforcement, those meetings just occur as needed.
Yes, that's what it says.
Why don't you mark me down for those and we'll see what gets involved there.
Okay.
If that becomes overwhelming,
That was air service and.
The code enforcement appeals.
Your Honor, next Air Service Advisory Committee meeting is Thursday at 1 o'clock, I believe, at the,
diving right in.
As needed, right?
As needed. Oh, by the way, it's tomorrow.
And one of the things
Could you write me a little
the
note
invite says something
when that
about
is,
versus.
where it
what was the other one? The Air Service and the.
and the other one that's in red here, the code enforcement appeals committee.
Code enforcement.
Yeah, obviously, we all have things, we all have lives outside of this, and there are things that get in the way, and it's pretty unreasonable to expect 100% attendance. However, we have had some of these assignments where basically the person never goes, or almost never goes. And so, I hope we can kind of hit some middle ground here. If you can look ahead in your schedule and you see, I'm not gonna make this thing, let's just talk about that in here, and maybe you can't do CATSI one week, and I'll say, well, I'll go for it, okay? But I'd like for us to have a pretty regular presence as much as we can on these committees and boards, so that, because it is meaningful for people to have that, connection with the council, so, I don't think there's any reason to get upset when somebody meets a meeting, but let's just try to strive for the highest level of attendance that we can all achieve. So that's all and if you need someone to sub, call me and I'll see if I can do it.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind me asking, I'm sorry I missed it. The health department, 5:30 p.m. on what day? Did you say Thursday?
I don't have, is it Wednesday?
Wednesday.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Wednesday, and we're waiting for our February schedule from Renee, so,
Okay.
I'm almost certain it's Wednesday.
Your Honor, Councilman Baker, make sure that we get you an email of when the meetings are.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, let's go around the table. You got anything, Sean?
No, everything I had has pretty much been answered tonight. I had questions on the ordinances. I wanted to have a conversation on wages, which has been put on a work session, so I think that's all I really had.
Okay, Steve?
I did attend the OID meeting on Monday to fill in for Bob while he was gone, and since he was gone, he got voted in as the chair, so that worked out well for him.
Now you gotta show up at meetings.
That's awesome.
That's all I got.
We already talked about the municipal court stuff, and you guys will be hearing some more about that, because there are some things that our new judge is really trying to work to clear up there.
Well, let's be clear, let's not try to bite off too much at one time. I
Mhm.
hope she understands that. Try to
Yeah.
do this in pieces.
She's chugging along with her staff, trying to fix some, mostly bookkeeping stuff.
Okay, right?
Just last week went to the Platte River Restoration Advisory Committee, which was good. So I'm getting my feet wet there and figuring that out. Then Monday I went to the Senior Services Board meeting, which was really good. Getting that all figured out. And so that was good.
What is the Platte River Advisory, what are they up to now? What's the next phase, or?
Jillian, do you want to kind of give us a little bit more than I could probably?
Your Honor, we are working on the First Street Reach, and we are at a point of trying to get a design that we can submit to the Wyoming DEQ and the Army Corps of Engineers to get a permit to construct in October. We need to bid no later than June in order to get it through you all to get everything approved.
Okay, thank you, Jillian.
Thank you.
That's all.
Chris?
Covered at the beginning, thank you.
Okay, Kristen?
I just had a couple questions for Carter and Tom on the event center audit, but honestly, those could probably be addressed after you just supposed to.
Okay.
A couple of things. I've had my phone and I've been watching. We've had 6 viewers, some in and out, so I like that. We've been having viewers watching our work session pretty steadily on the phone, so, or watching, so I like that. One of the things that Jesse Morgan brought up, and I'm sorry I keep bringing him up, but he's making some points, but I have some questions regarding his points. And one of it is I read Kathy Stepp's email regarding it. So I guess my question, and Mr. Carter, maybe you can answer it for me, that in 2016, 2017, 2018, was what is it, the Rotary, and what was she part of? He brought up the fact that we approved to have these clubs paid for them, taxpayers' money paying for these clubs or whatever they are. Has that been approved in the past?
Has it been approved?
Yeah, approved in the past.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, I would say it has. I started in 2017, just to give you a personal example. Oh, please.
Mr. City Manager Forsland had instituted that, and I don't know if it even existed prior to him, but I can tell you that under him as the city manager, it was a requirement for several contract positions in the city to be a member of a community organization, so that kind of break down the isolation, if you will, and it was put into the contracts. I mean, I had it in my contract for 10 years ago, because it wasn't a suggestion, it was, you will be a member of one of these, so that different aspects of the city can interact, different locations in different groups. So my contract the entire time with the city, since I was a captain, paid for a Rotary membership, but there was, the restrictions weren't super strict. Rotary, Kiwanis, Lions Clubs, those kinds of things. I don't know if it was every department head, but it was many of the ones that I worked with a lot.
Okay.
Mike?
Well, and actually, that precedent goes back as far as 40 years that I know of. And I've been in the Lions Club, and they seemed like the fire chiefs for quite a while were all in the Lions Club and paid for by the city.
Okay. The reason why I ask this is no disrespect to Mr. Morgan. I don't understand why he brought it up if he himself or this council, past council, has approved of it in the past. Now, I guess what I'm saying is, if we are going to require them to attend those, then I agree that we should pay for it without a shadow of a doubt. Yet, if it's going to, we don't require them to pay or to go to it to keep up public relations, then I think we should look at whether we should pay for it, the taxpayers should pay for it or not. I see where his issue's coming up, and I see both sides of it, and I think that's something maybe down the line we need next year, whatever, when it comes up, we make a decision if we're gonna require it or not. It's just something I wanted to bring up.
No, it'll be part of the budget, and we're gonna have budget discussions pretty soon, Sean.
I just wanted to say that I think it's a good thing that we do that. It helps with transparency and networking for the city and getting other aspects of the community in the know on what's going on in the city. So I don't see a problem with it at all.
And I agree. I think we need to make a decision. If we're going to require them, we should pay for it definitely. But yeah, the other thing I want to bring up, and maybe I'm bringing it up at the wrong time. I don't know if anybody else has noticed, but if you were going from the event center southbound headed southbound on Poplar Street, you get to roughly by the planetarium, the speed limit's 30. You go through underneath the interstate by Burger King, still 30. As soon as you hit that Poplar Street bridge, it switches to 40 miles an hour. So from on Poplar Street Bridge, right at the top, it's 40 all the way to Kings Road, I think it is. Then it drops, then it changes to 35. And then it switches to 30 after Collins. If you go the opposite direction and you're headed northbound, come off Poplar or CY onto Poplar, and you're coming down, it is 30, switches to 35 at the Scenic Station, and it's 35 all the way until you get to past the Poplar Bridge. As you make the turn kind of by the real estate company there, real estate, it's 30. And then it jumps back up to 40 as you're going up the hill to the event center. So one side you have 35 northbound. One side you have 40 southbound. And from that bridge to Kings, I don't get why that's 40. I don't understand. When it's 30, switches to 40, switches down to 35. So I guess I want to bring up if we could have our road division or whoever looks at that, possibly changing that to either 35, 30. I just don't think the one way it's 35, yeah, as soon as you hit that, it's 40. Especially with that major intersection of First or Yellowstone and Poplar, I don't think it's wise, especially on that bridge. But that's
Did you want to comment?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, I think if indeed council wants us to investigate that, it probably would be helpful for us to actually do a warrant study that would suggest one way or the other whether or not those speeds are appropriate. Because we might find that the speeds need to be reduced more so than brought up or made consistent throughout that stretch that you identified. That's typically the process we go through to evaluate speed. And Andrew, would you add anything to that?
No, I just add that stretch you're mentioning is wide up right away. So we can make suggestions to wide up, and ultimately wide up is responsible for setting the speed limit on that stretch of roadway, particularly from the interstate south all the way, in fact, all the way up to CY Boulevard.
But not going north.
North from the interstate up to the event center is generally city right away. Yes, but the stretch between the Ramada, south, over the bridge, and in fact, all the way south to CY is wide out.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that, thank you.
A lot of white on town.
Yeah, more than you think, yeah.
A lot.
I have no clue, but okay, yeah, if we can make a suggestion on that, cause it doesn't make sense to me. One way is different than the other, and why that bridge 40, it doesn't make sense.
Well, didn't you give us a handout about all the exceptions that are currently in our speed limits around town? I guess we could look at that whole list at some point and see if they all make sense to people, because sometimes they're just a whole list of whenever.
Right.
We could put that on our proposed work session agenda items at some point if people want to. Is there interest in doing that? No? No?
Nope, we
Need
got a
5
traffic
thumbs
planning
up.
department to handle that.
We get 5 thumbs up? No, I guess not. Okay. All right. Anything else, Ken?
That's
I did attend the health department, and they have some interesting challenges right now with their maternal health, their services to young women and their staffing levels. We had a mayor commissioner meeting, or I guess we call it the Council of Governments meeting. And I want to bring up that that has traditionally been attended by the mayor and vice mayor, but I think it might be helpful if other members of council came on occasion, just so that you could meet the mayor of Evansville, the mayor of Mills, and the county commissioners, and just find out who these people are, because a lot of you probably never met. So, before the next meeting, I may announce that and see if somebody wants to volunteer, or we could even do some kind of rotation if people are interested. So, and then along those lines, I'm hoping to meet with the Mills Council and the Evansville Council, if they'll have me, to just talk about how we're interacting these days and what kind of rumors they're hearing about Casper that I could dispel, and just just try to get along. So, and I think that's it. So, 7:30, and what time were we supposed to finish?
5:30, 7:35.
7:35.
Look at us.
How about that? See you all next week.
Thanks, everybody.
I think your days are regarding.